Looking at the 2 red lines on the pregnancy test, Hannah Quinn felt a surge of joy from the bottom of her heart. It had been 3 years, and she was finally pregnant. She had to tell Julian Sterling this good news immediately. If he knew she was pregnant, surely he would treat her a little better. She picked up her phone and dialed. As soon as the call connected, she couldn't wait to say, "Julian, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a father. Get rid of it." Julian's cold voice came through the line. Hannah thought she had misheard, her hand trembling as she held the phone. "Wah, what did you say?" Click, the call was hung up abruptly. I must have heard wrong. Hannah sat on the sofa, hugging her legs, comforting herself over and over in her heart. With a loud bang, the door was kicked open. She jumped in fright and looked over. Julian Sterling walked toward her step by step, his eyes filled with a wintry frost that made her shudder. "Jul, ah." Before she could finish speaking, she was yanked up by Julian. His strength was immense, and Hannah felt as if the wrist he had grabbed was about to snap. Hannah vaguely guessed what Julian wanted to do, but holding on to a sliver of hope, she said, "Julian, I'm pregnant. I have your child. Please be gentle, okay?" He sneered coldly. Hannah Quinn, did you not understand what I said on the phone? I said get rid of it. I'm taking you to the hospital now. The thought of my seed staying inside you for even 1 more second makes me sick. Boom. Hannah felt as though she had been struck by lightning by his heartlessness. Julian didn't like her. In fact, he hated her. She had known this from the first day of their marriage when he called out Sylvia's name in bed. But she had always hoped that time would dissolve the misunderstanding between them, and that one day he would finally fall in love with her. But in the end, Julian didn't hesitate for a second. He wanted to kill her child. Hannah resisted. "No, Julian, it wasn't easy for me to conceive this child. I beg you, please. As long as you keep this child, I'll do anything you want, anything." Seeing Julian seem to relent slightly, she nodded heavily and whispered, "Yes, anything." "Good, then let's do it." Julian threw her onto the sofa and pressed his body down, pinning her beneath him. Realizing what he intended to do, Hannah resisted, crying and begging for mercy. "Julian, the baby isn't even 3 months old yet. You can't." Julian didn't care. Hannah kept shaking her head, begging him over and over to let her go. Hannah felt discomfort radiating from her abdomen. "Julian, please stop. You want me to stop? Fine, then bring Sylvia West back to life." Julian's vicious words made Hannah's heart turn to ash, filled with grievances. She hadn't done anything back then. Why did everyone blame her for Sylvia West's death? Sylvia's car went off that cliff on its own. It had nothing to do with me. Hearing the name, Sylvia West, from Hannah's mouth made Julian hate her even more. It was all this woman's fault. If she hadn't spread rumors that she had given her virginity to him, claiming she was his woman, how could Sylvia have been so heartbroken that she went racing on the mountain road and fell off the cliff? It was this woman who forced his Sylvia to her death. It hurts. A sharp pain twisted in her abdomen, and under Julian's torture, Hannah passed out. When Hannah woke up, she was in the hospital. Her best friend, Natalie Summers, saw her awake and said excitedly, "Hannah, you're finally awake." "Nat, the baby. Is the baby still there?" Natalie looked at her with an expression of frustration at her lack of self-preservation, but she knew too well she knew the depth of Hannah's feelings for Julian. She lowered her voice. "The baby is gone." From Natalie's perspective, losing the baby wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but for Hannah, it was enough to leave her heartbroken for days. She placed her hand on her flat stomach, and tears the size of beans rolled down her face. Hannah stayed in the hospital for a full 2 weeks, not because her body was weak, nor because she hadn't recovered from the loss of the child, but because she was hoping that Julian would care about her, come to the hospital to see her, even for just a glance. But the result? Her expectant heart slowly died, turning cold. Divorce after 3 years, Hannah finally made up her mind. After being discharged, Hannah went straight back to the villa in the south of the city. The entire villa was empty, even colder and more desolate than the hospital ward. She sat on the sofa and waited. Julian returned in the latter half of the night, smelling of alcohol and a woman's perfume. Hannah had smelled this scent for 3 years, yet even now, it still stung her heart. "Julian Sterling, let's get a divorce." The word divorce sobered him up a bit. He lit a cigarette and smoked it without a care. "Divorce?" Hannah Quinn, keep dreaming, yes, he had married her initially to take revenge on her. For 3 years, he had lingered among women outside, leaving her to guard the huge marital villa alone. Occasionally, he would be kind enough to sleep with her a few times, either to torture her or to get rid of a child. Hannah, to use a modern phrase, was a pathetic woman who had walked into the grave of marriage. You've tormented me for 3 whole years. Even the child is gone. Even if I really owed your Sylvia, I should have paid it off by now. Let's divorce. I don't want anything. I just beg you to set me free. Hannah's words were filled with misery. If he hadn't learned that Patrick Pierce was coming back, Julian might have almost felt a shred of sympathy for her. But Hannah had always been a woman with a kind face and a vicious heart. He sneered coldly. So what if you lost a child? Even if I aborted a second, a third, a fourth? You still wouldn't have paid off the debt you owe. After saying this, Julian walked up to Hannah, saw the divorce agreement she had prepared, and found it incredibly eyesore. He reached out, tore the A4 papers into shreds, threw them in Hannah's face, and then pressed himself onto her. Hannah was in the hospital again. The cause was delicate, severe tearing. She lay in the hospital bed she had just left yesterday, thinking of Julian's cruelty and even thought of death. Julian would always torture her anyway, so she might as well die and end it all. When people are in despair, they often cannot see the road ahead. Hannah looked at the fruit knife on the platter, picked it up, gestured over her wrist, and sliced down. Watching her blood slowly drain away, she closed her eyes, feeling a rare sense of relief. If she died, would Julian be sad? When she woke up again, seeing the tall figure standing by the bed, Hannah thought she had gone to heaven. But he seemed to be on the phone, and the content of the call, along with the name, Sylvia, made Hannah realize she was still in hell. Sylvia, don't worry. When she wakes up, I'll make her sign. I waited for you for 3 years. Now that I know you're still alive, the position of Mrs. Sterling is naturally yours. Be good. Wait for me. Every word. Every word was like a knife, slicing her flesh, stabbing her heart, scraping her bones. It was more painful than death. Tears flowed uncontrollably. After she raised her hand to wipe them away, she met Julian's gaze. You're awake. If you're awake, sign it quickly. Hannah Quinn, I'm setting you free. As if it were some great act of mercy. Julian didn't ask anything, didn't even offer a single word of greeting. Hannah's gaze fell on the divorce agreement. He had already signed it with a flourish. She believed Julian must have been very happy when he signed it. Natalie had just returned from buying breakfast for Hannah. Seeing Julian standing by the bed from afar and Hannah's eyes looking moist, she rushed over. She immediately saw the divorce agreement on the bed and exploded. Julian Sterling, are you even human? Hannah likes you so much that she slit her wrists and tried to commit suicide last night because of you. She almost died. He looked at Hannah, his gaze landing on her left wrist wrapped in bandages. He frowned, then thought this bitter flesh trick was just another one of her usual tactics. He sneered, Heh, suicide? Then why is she still alive? If she had died, Sylvia and I could have gone to the registry office today to register. Why go through the trouble of making this trip? What Julian had said on the phone just now was already hurtful enough. What was even more hurtful was that her death was actually something he would have welcomed. Julian Sterling, you scumbag. Natalie stood in front of him, wanting to scratch him to death. Julian shoved her, and she fell to the ground, the breakfast she just bought spilling everywhere. Natalie climbed up from the floor and wanted to tear into Julian again, but Hannah stopped her. Natalie looked back at her and saw a rare anger in her eyes. At this moment, Hannah was both angry and aggrieved. Because of Sylvia West's death, she had lived a life worse than death for 3 years and lost another child. But in the end, Sylvia West wasn't dead at all. A few days ago, when she wanted a divorce, Julian wouldn't agree, forcing her to continue atoning for Sylvia, even putting her in the hospital. Now, just because Sylvia was alive, he wanted her to give up the position of Mrs. Sterling. Why should she let them have their way? I won't sign this. I'm not divorcing. Julian had originally thought he and Hannah could finally cut ties, but he had severely underestimated her shamelessness. His eyes were cold as ice. He picked up the divorce agreement, thrust it in front of her, and said fiercely, Hannah Quinn, I'll give you one more chance. Sign it immediately. Hannah snorted coldly, imitating Julian's earlier action. She took the agreement he handed her, tore it to shreds, and threw it in his face. Julian Sterling, you want a divorce. Keep dreaming. Even if she would be miserable for the rest of her life, Hannah would absolutely not make room for the returning Sylvia West. She was unwilling, she was aggrieved in Julian's eyes. This was shameless and detestable. He walked up to Hannah, intending to do something when his phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, he answered hurriedly, "Sylvia, you're feeling unwell? Don't be afraid, I'm coming back right away." Hanging up the phone, Julian looked at Hannah again and asked, "You're not divorcing, right?" Her tone was firm. "No, Hannah Quinn, you will regret this decision," Julian said viciously, then turned and left without looking back. In 3 years of marriage, Hannah had never seen him so anxious. Seeing it now, she understood. No matter what she did for him, it would never compare to the white moonlight in Julian's heart, his love for Sylvia West. Natalie didn't know what comforting words to say. She glanced at the messy breakfast on the floor and said, "I'll go buy another portion." Before she could leave, Patrick Pierce suddenly walked in from outside and said, "You stay with her." "I'll go." When Hannah was discharged, Patrick came to pick her up. He was wearing casual clothes, looking like the boy next door. For the past few days, she had been heartbroken over Julian's affairs and hadn't spoken much. Patrick hadn't asked anything either. In the hospital, they had hardly exchanged a word. Inside the Land Rover, "Big P, thank you." Patrick habitually patted her head. "Between us, there's no need for thanks." Indeed, they didn't need to thank each other. Patrick was the son of her father, Mr. Quinn's late comrade in arms. He had been fostered in the Quinn family since he was 8. To Hannah, he was like a biological brother. 3 years ago, when she suddenly married Julian, Patrick didn't even attend the wedding. He had rushed abroad for a project. It had been 3 years, and now he was back. Hannah asked casually, "Why did you decide to come back?" Patrick revealed a heartwarming smile. "I missed you, so I came back." Hannah didn't dare ask about the deeper meaning of this sentence, nor did she dare to think about it. Just then, the traffic light turned red, and the car stopped. The atmosphere became ambiguous for a moment. Under the long silence, Patrick reached out, stroked her bandaged wrist, and spoke. "Hannah, Julian Sterling is not suitable for you. Don't drag this out. Get a divorce." As soon as he returned, he heard the news of Hannah's hospitalization and rushed over. Before entering the ward, he witnessed the argument between the three of them. He was pained that Hannah, whom he held in his palm for fear of breaking, actually tried to commit suicide for that detestable man, Julian Sterling. Seeing Hannah's look of wanting to ask but being afraid to, Patrick explained, "I heard everything outside the ward that day. Hannah, listen to me, get a divorce. Don't be afraid, I'll marry you." She was touched that Patrick knew about that incident and was still willing to marry her. 4 years ago, she had slept with Julian in a daze. When she woke up the next day, she saw a suggestive text message on Julian's phone, "We have something you care about. If you don't want to die an ugly death, come to the shipping container at the East District Pier." At that time, she was worried about Julian and wanted to investigate. Seeing Julian was still fast asleep, she went to the appointment in his place. The result was that she was raped by several vicious men. When she woke up from her coma, she knew it was Patrick who had saved her. This incident was terrible. She hid it from everyone, only Patrick knew. When she finally recovered from the trauma of the rape and wanted to find Julian, she discovered she was pregnant. The child in her belly could have belonged to the men who raped her, or it could have been Julian's. Although the decision might have been wrong, she still wanted to secretly give birth to the child because she couldn't kill a child that might belong to Julian, even if the possibility was low. Besides, the child was a piece of her own flesh. With Patrick's help, Hannah went into hiding to await the birth. Unfortunately, the child had no fortune. When he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. It was a stillbirth. She persisted for 10 months, only to be left with despair after anticipation. After her body recovered, she came to find Julian, thinking she still had this love to protect. But she stumbled upon Julian and Sylvia West being intimate. Combined with her grievance and the pain of losing the child, she impulsively blurted out, "Julian, I gave my first time to you. I am your woman." As a result, Sylvia West got into a traffic accident because of this and fell off a cliff. She had no evidence to prove that her first time was indeed given to him, nor could she explain why she only appeared now, or why she had disappeared for nearly a year. She could only bear the crime of killing Sylvia West and be tortured by Julian for 3 years. She was very moved that Patrick was willing to accept her. It was just that. She had clearly done so much for Julian, yet she had become the person he hated the most. She really wasn't reconciled to exiting the stage in such a disgraceful manner. Besides, she knew exactly what kind of person Sylvia West was, someone who only cared about profit. They were college classmates for 4 years. She knew her too well, and Sylvia's disappearance and reappearance were too suspicious. How could she feel at ease handing over the man she loved like life itself to her? Hannah said apologetically, but firmly, "Brother Pat, I won't divorce. I won't." The green light turned on. Patrick withdrew his gaze, looked ahead, drove seriously, and said nothing more. Back at the villa, Hannah found someone sitting on the sofa. Julian. Before Hannah could finish her sentence, Julian covered her mouth, pushed her down, lifted her leg, and propped it up on the dining table in the living room. From afternoon to evening, Julian didn't stop. Using various humiliating positions, he tossed Hannah around completely. When he stopped, Hannah realized her voice was hoarse from screaming. Julian sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, smoking a cigarette while admiring the footage he had just filmed. The unbearable screams and sounds of impact echoed through the villa. "Tell me, if I send this video to your dear brother Pat, or put it online, what will happen?" Hannah lay on the floor, enduring the pain as she looked at him. "Julian Sterling, you are shameless, more shameless than she had imagined." "Shameless?" Julian sneered. He stood up from the sofa, walked over to Hannah, and lifted her chin. "Hannah Quinn, you spread rumors to drive Sylvia to her death. Now that she survived a great disaster and returned, you insist on hogging the position of Mrs. Sterling. If I'm shameless, I learned it from you." Every sentence Hannah spoke caused severe pain in her throat, but she insisted on speaking. "I have never done the things you think I did. Julian, Sylvia committed suicide, and now she's alive again. Don't you find that suspicious? Also, Julian, I'm not hogging the position of Mrs. Sterling. I just want to protect my marriage, protect the love she had cherished for so many years." She really had some nerve, making even shamelessness sound so dignified. Hannah's mouth really annoyed him. Julian revealed a wicked smirk, unzipped his pants, held up the camcorder, and walked toward Hannah. Julian played the filthy scenes in the video for her to see. "Do you want the video exposed, or do you want a divorce?" Hannah spat out the viscous liquid in her mouth. Her heart was already scarred and battered. Thinking of the child he had gotten rid of, she screamed, "Julian, expose it with you accompanying me in it. What do I have to be afraid of?" Let's see what expression Sylvia will have when she sees it later. So what if it was exposed? It would just give the people of River City a bit more gossip to talk about after dinner topics they had already discussed before. Like how a black-hearted vicious woman drove her friend to death to marry into a wealthy family. What was there to care about? Hannah added another sentence, her attitude firm. "I refuse to divorce." Julian smashed the camcorder in his hand heavily onto the floor, gave Hannah a grim look, and then left. That look made a chill involuntarily rise from the bottom of her heart. To force her to divorce, would he stop at nothing? The next day, Hannah was woken up by a phone call. Seeing the caller ID, it was her mother, Zoe Quinn, whom she hadn't contacted in 3 years. She hurriedly pressed the answer button. Before she could call out, "Mom," a roar came from the other end. "Hannah Quinn, you jinx, it wasn't enough that you made the Quinn family lose all face back then. Now you shamelessly occupy the position of Mrs. Sterling and force Julian to attack the Quinn Corporation. How can you be so cheap? The biggest mistake of my life, Zoe Quinn, was giving birth to you. Hurry up and sign the divorce agreement." Zoe finished speaking in one breath and hung up the phone. From beginning to end, Hannah didn't have a chance to say, "Mom." She collapsed on the floor holding her phone. She wanted to cry, but found that her tears seemed to have dried up. In the past, Julian hated her and would only target her. Now, to marry Sylvia, was he not even going to spare the Quinn Corporation? For his precious Sylvia, he really was capable of anything. Hannah took a taxi to Julian's private villa at Half Moon Bay. She rang the doorbell. Soon, the door opened. The person who opened the door wasn't Julian, but Sylvia West. Sylvia still looked as beautiful as a flower, just like back then. A limited edition Chanel dress outlined her graceful figure. In contrast, Hannah, having given birth to a child and lived miserably for the past 3 years, had hair like withered grass, a complete washed-out woman. "Hannah's here. Come in and sit." Sylvia spoke with the tone of the hostess, leading Hannah into the house. acting as if she had been looking forward to her visit. This was the first time Hannah had seen Sylvia since learning she was alive. She had many questions, but the Quinn family's matters were urgent. "Where is Julian? I'm looking for him. I just felt like eating dessert from honeymoon dessert, so Julian went to buy it for me." Every word Sylvia said was polite, yet every word was like a knife stabbing into Hannah's heart, making her unable to resist asking, "Sylvia West, you disappeared for 3 years. Why appear now?" "Why? To see your miserable state, of course." "Ha, so what if you gave your virginity to Julian? So what if you spent 3 years trying to win him back? The one he loves will never be you." Sylvia's voice suddenly grew heavier, her tone playful. "Hannah, you must be very curious. Curious why Julian loves me so much? Yes, everyone wishes to know where they lost. Only then can they be convinced either to work harder or to give up." Sylvia's lips curved into a beautiful arc as she smiled. Because Julian is convinced that 4 years ago, at the Venice Hotel, after being drugged by a woman trying to climb into his bed, he grabbed someone to relieve himself. He thinks the person he slept with was me. Boom. Hannah almost couldn't stand steady. So all of this was Sylvia's doing. She stole the love that should have belonged to Hannah, then deliberately faked her death to deepen the misunderstanding between Hannah and Julian. She and Julian could have loved each other. As long as the misunderstanding was cleared up, it was still possible now. Hannah became agitated. She stepped forward, grabbed Sylvia's wrist, and dragged her toward the stairs. "You have to tell Julian the truth. Once he knows everything, he'll leave the Quinn Corporation alone." Sylvia sneered. "Hannah, are you stupid? Why would I tell Julian these things? I'll only let him know what a vicious woman you are, and then wait for him to avenge me by taking down the Quinn family and giving it to me. Ha ha ha, you don't know yet, do you? Just now, Julian has already submitted evidence of the Quinn Corporation's tax evasion. Just wait to collect your parents' corpses." How could this person be so vicious? Hannah roared, "Sylvia West!" She grabbed Sylvia's shoulders hard, accidentally knocking over a blue and white porcelain vase next to the stairs. The sound of shattering echoed through the villa. A small child suddenly ran over, grabbed Hannah's hand, and shouted in a soft voice, "Stop it!" Hannah realized that due to her anger, she had become irrational. She let go, but even though she let go, Sylvia still fell to the ground, pulling Hannah down with her. Hannah fell right onto the shards of the porcelain vase, the pain blurring her vision. When she recovered her senses, she found that the little boy who had grabbed her hand had fallen backward down the stairs. He tumbled all the way from the second floor, landing to the first floor. Blood flowed from his forehead. Just then, the villa's front door opened. Julian stood in the doorway, holding the bag from honeymoon dessert. Hannah endured the pain of the shards cutting her skin and wanted to check on the child, but Sylvia rushed down first, wailing, "Andy, how are you? Andy." Then she looked up at Hannah on the second floor with bloodshot eyes. "Hannah Quinn, if you hate me, come at me. Why did you hurt an innocent child?" "Julian, I shouldn't have come back. I shouldn't have come back just because Andy wanted a father. I failed Andy. This is my flesh and blood with you. If anything happens to him, I won't live either. I won't live." Sylvia cried hysterically. Even though Hannah knew she was acting, she felt heartbroken. What hurt her even more was that Julian and Sylvia actually had a child, and it was born during the years Sylvia was missing. How was that possible, Julian? This child isn't yours, absolutely not. The day before Sylvia disappeared, Hannah had visited her. While chatting, Sylvia had her period and rushed to the WC to change a pad. How could she disappear the next day and give birth to a child? This child definitely wasn't Julian's. Absolutely not. Hannah Quinn, you truly are vicious. Andy's life is hanging by a thread, and you actually have the leisure to plot about whether this child is mine. Are you even human? She just cared too much about Julian and didn't want him to be deceived, so she was eager to clarify. Unlike Sylvia, who had such superb acting skills, the key was Julian never believed her. Just like now, Julian held the unconscious Andy and rushed to the hospital. Worried about Andy's safety, Hannah followed in a taxi. Seeing Julian, she hurriedly asked, "How is Andy?" "Hess, now you know how to care. Sorry to disappoint you, he's not dead yet." A nurse ran over from the operating room. Sylvia rushed forward. "My son, how is Andy?" the nurse said. "He was brought in time, the situation isn't critical. But right now, the blood bank is a bit low on blood." I need to contact the blood center to transfer some. Julian remembered something. During the premarital checkup, he had seen Hannah's blood type. Andy is type A, she's type A too. Draw hers. He pointed at Hannah with such a vicious tone. Draw as much as needed. Andy Sterling was indeed injured because of her. Hannah stepped forward. Okay, take mine. It was just drawing blood, she accepted it. Just as the nurse was about to take Hannah to draw blood, Sylvia suddenly jumped out and grabbed Julian's arm. Julian, forget it. Since the blood center has blood, there's no need. Hannah looks like she's in poor health. Gentle, understanding her appearance moved Julian deeply. But, Sylvia, I know you are kind, but this kind of evil person doesn't deserve your sympathy. After Julian finished speaking, he glared at Hannah again, looking at her like she was a monster. Sylvia leaned into Julian's embrace. Julian, listen to me. Hannah looks like this. If something goes wrong when drawing blood, how will Andy think about it in the future? After speaking, she coughed a few times. Julian looked distressed and put his arm around Sylvia's waist. All right, since Sylvia says so, we'll wait for the blood from the center. After speaking, he lowered his head and kissed Sylvia's forehead, cherishing her like a treasure. The nurse on the side revealed an envious look. This gentle Julian was someone Hannah had never seen. For 3 years in bed, he never had foreplay, only rough pounding. Strange. Watching a scene common in movies, Hannah actually envied them, to the point of wanting to cry. Andy's condition stabilized, and the tension on Julian's face eased slightly. While Sylvia wasn't around, Hannah approached Julian. We need to talk. Seeing Hannah sticking to him again, Julian looked impatient. What is there to talk about with you? Be sensible and sign the divorce papers quickly. She knew Julian didn't want to waste words with her, but she really couldn't bear to see him be tricked into fatherhood. If Sylvia told you that she survived her suicide attempt, didn't want to disturb your life, but had Andy and loved you too much to let Andy not have a father, so she appeared, then Julian, this child, definitely isn't yours. I swear on my life. Afraid he wouldn't believe her, she added with a bitter smile. Julian, I like you, you know that, so I don't want you to be a cuckold father. Andy is absolutely not yours and Sylvia's child. Believe me? Hannah's eyes were full of determination, and the words she spoke with that bitter smile made Julian feel a rare pang of heartache. He actually wanted to believe her. His face remained displeased. What if the test result says Andy is my son? I will sign the divorce agreement, and I, Hannah Quinn, will be at your disposal. Hannah firmly believed that this time, the misunderstanding between her and Julian would definitely be cleared up. Once the misunderstanding about the child was resolved, she would tell him again that 4 years ago, the person who slept with him was her, along with her love for him all these years. She waited anxiously in the hospital waiting area for the test results. 2 hours later, seeing Julian come out holding the test report, she rushed up to him, her gaze falling on the report in his hand. Andy isn't your child, right? She reached out to take it. Smack! She received a loud slap across the face first. Hannah Quinn, you are despicable. Thinking that he had actually believed her just now, Julian felt he had wronged Sylvia. His Sylvia was so gentle, loved him so much, how could she lie? This slap was heavy. Hannah was dazed by the hit and felt aggrieved to the extreme. Julian, how am I despicable? I just didn't want you to be cheated. Andy Sterling is absolutely not yours and Sylvia's child. Thump. Someone fell to the ground. Sylvia? Julian threw away the test report and ran past Hannah, looking very anxious. Hannah looked back and saw that Sylvia had returned at some point and was kneeling on the ground, looking very sorrowful. Julian, Andy is your child. I carried him for 10 months and almost died in childbirth to bring him into this world. Believe me, that is your child. Julian's eyes were full of guilt as he hugged Sylvia tightly. Okay, don't be angry, I believe you. Just as he finished saying this, Hannah picked up the test report from the ground. She took a look and was so shocked she felt all her strength drain away. The test report showed that Andy Sterling was indeed Julian's son. How was this possible? Hannah looked up toward the two of them and saw Julian hugging Sylvia tightly. Sylvia, in a direction Julian couldn't see, flashed a cunning smile at her, then pretended to faint and fell into Julian's arms. Julian hurriedly picked up Sylvia, looked back at the stunned Hannah, and said fiercely, Hannah Quinn, I will make you pay back every injury Sylvia has suffered, watching Julian's retreating back. Thinking of the words he left behind, Hannah felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar. She collapsed to the ground with a thud, feeling like she was dying of pain. She reached out toward Julian's direction, crying out, "Julian," hoping he would look back, just one look. However, all the strength drained from her body until she passed out completely. In those few dozen seconds, which felt neither long nor short, Julian didn't look back, not even once. When she woke up again, Hannah was in a hospital bed. A news report was playing on the TV. The chairman of the Quinn Group had been reported for tax evasion. When the police went to arrest him, they found he had died of a sudden heart attack in his office. Dead? Impossible. Hannah pulled out the IV needle from her hand. As soon as her feet touched the floor, she collapsed due to weakness, her head hitting the ground heavily. A nurse heard the noise and ran in. Seeing her looking like a helpless child, ignoring the blood dripping from her forehead as she crawled toward the door, the nurse rushed over and helped her back to bed. She scolded angrily, "Do you want to die? Long-term malnutrition, plus a slit wrist and excessive blood loss. You fainted in the hallway yesterday. If it had been half an hour later, you would have died." Now, her own life was not important at all. Hannah crawled up from the bed again. "Don't stop me, I want to find Dad." "Dad?" The nurse didn't expect the patient to be this weak, yet still have the strength to struggle. Just as Hannah was about to fall off the bed again, someone rushed in from outside the ward and caught the falling Hannah in his arms. Seeing that the person was Patrick, Hannah asked urgently, "Big P, the report on TV is fake, right? Dad is still alive, right?" "Hannah, Dad is gone, but don't be afraid, I'm here." Patrick's eyes were full of pain. Even though she knew the truth was exactly what the TV reported, she still refused to believe it. "Impossible, impossible, you're all lying to me." "Lying to me?" She waved her arms, grabbing wildly, showing suicidal tendencies. Patrick could only hug her tightly, repeating over and over, "Hannah, don't be afraid. I'm here, don't be afraid." Julian, who had seen the news and rushed to the ward, saw the two embracing. His hand holding the divorce agreement tightened involuntarily. He walked over with long strides and sneered, "Heh, in broad daylight, hugging like this as brother and sister. Don't you find it disgusting and shameful?" Julian threw the divorce agreement onto the bed. "Hannah Quinn, sign it quickly. The thought that you and I are still husband and wife disgusts me." She and Patrick weren't related by blood anyway. Even at a time like this, Julian wouldn't show her any mercy. His words were cold and heartless, forcing Hannah to face reality. Her father was indeed dead, killed by her, all because of her unnecessary persistence. Seeing Patrick raise his fist to hit Julian, Hannah reached out to stop him. She shook her head at Patrick, then picked up the divorce agreement beside her and signed it without even looking. Hannah handed the signed agreement to Julian. "Julian, I admit defeat." Yes, she lost. She lost miserably. The moment Julian took the divorce agreement, he thought he should be happy, but he couldn't name the complex emotions in his heart. Seeing Hannah and Patrick holding hands was exceptionally blinding to him. Before leaving, he said coldly, "Hannah, if you had signed earlier, none of this would have happened." For the first time, Hannah agreed with Julian. If she had given up on this love earlier, given up on this obsession, things wouldn't have reached this point. Because, in the end, she couldn't protect anything. After Julian left, Hannah screamed and cried in the ward, pounding her chest with her fist. Her heart hurt so much, so much. On the day of Mr. Quinn's burial, it rained heavily. Hannah couldn't see her father off as a daughter because her mother, Zoe, hated her to the bone, even threatening suicide to prevent Hannah from stepping foot in the cemetery. Hannah could only kneel alone in the distance, her frail body soaked in the rain, kowtowing in the direction of Mr. Quinn, murmuring apologies. Her child was gone, her father was gone, her mother didn't want her, and Julian didn't love her. She truly had nothing left. Several days later, Hannah went to the villa in the south of the city where she had lived when she got married. She and Julian were divorced. She should have come to pack her things earlier, but it was delayed because of her father's passing. She entered the password, but it showed an error. "Julian Sterling, you really couldn't wait to cut ties with me." Hannah took out her phone, preparing to text Julian when the door suddenly opened. Inside, Sylvia stood wearing fiery red pajamas. She smiled at Hannah. "I thought I heard something. It's Hannah." Julian changed the password. She looked at her clothes and acted shy. "Sorry, I didn't expect anyone to come. Julian wore me out yesterday, so I forgot to change." Her heart stung, but Hannah pretended to be strong on the surface. "I'm here to pack my luggage." "Oh, sorry about that. I had too many things and no place to put them. Julian had all your stuff thrown away." Saying sorry with her mouth, Sylvia's eyes held no guilt whatsoever. Hannah didn't show sadness. Instead, she smiled. "Julian threw them away? Or was it you, Sylvia, who threw them away? You changed the password too, didn't you?" A trace of viciousness flashed across Sylvia's eyes. She clenched her hands, wishing she could crush Hannah. These past few days, Julian had been distracted and hadn't mentioned going to the registry to get married. He said that old Madam Sterling thought he treated marriage like a game, took Andy away, and forbid them from registering immediately. But every day they didn't marry made Sylvia anxious. She felt that during the 3 years she faked her disappearance, Julian might have developed feelings for Hannah. Moreover, Hannah was a ticking time bomb. Who knew if one day she would discover certain secrets? So, she had better die. "Yes, I changed it, so what? I, Sylvia West, intend to take everything you, Hannah Quinn, possess. Why treat me like this? I didn't treat you badly." Hannah and Sylvia were college classmates. Sylvia's family background was difficult, so in college, whatever Hannah bought, she always bought 2 portions, one for herself and one for Sylvia. "Heth, didn't treat me badly? You did that to get praise from everyone. Hannah, do you know? In college, everyone praised you for being pretty and kind-hearted. But do you know what everyone said about me? They said I lived off charity, that I was a little dog raised by you, Hannah Quinn." Sylvia glared at Hannah, gnashing her teeth. "So back then I thought I, Sylvia West, must possess everything you have. Ha ha! Some say kindness can also sprout seeds of malice. Hannah was a living example. It didn't matter anymore. Things were gone, they were gone. It was just a pity about the gifts Patrick had given her. Sylvia, you must guard the love you cheated your way into very carefully." Hannah finished speaking and prepared to leave. Behind her, Sylvia suddenly said, "Do you know how Mr. Quinn died? Wasn't it heart disease triggered by the tax evasion scandal?" Hannah turned around and met Sylvia's vicious gaze. Sylvia smiled triumphantly. "I angered your dad to death." Hannah swayed and had to lean against the wall to stand steady. Sylvia played with the fruit knife on the table and laughed. "I called him and told him his good daughter was raped 4 years ago, and not by one person, but by a group." Hannah clenched her fists, nails digging into her flesh, drawing blood. "So, you were the one who lured me into the trap back then. You did it all," Sylvia shook her head. "I'll admit to what I did, but I didn't hire the men who raped you." "Heth, looks like you, Hannah, did so much evil that plenty of people wanted your life. Pity about Mr. Quinn, angered to death." "Shut up." Hannah's breathing became rapid with rage. Sylvia's torture continued. "Even over the phone, I could hear the sound of Mr. Quinn crashing to the floor. A loud bang. Images flashed through Hannah's mind. In the images, her father's forehead was covered in blood. He lay on the ground, crawling toward her, leaving a trail of blood, saying, "Hannah, why did you insist on loving Julian Sterling?" Her vision turned blood red. When she came to her senses, she saw Sylvia standing right in front of her. Sylvia shoved the fruit knife into Hannah's hand, then gripped Hannah's hand tightly, forced the knife into her own body, and whispered in Hannah's ear, "Tell me, seeing this, will Julian believe you or believe me? This time I'll let you win, I won't say a word." After speaking, Sylvia collapsed to the ground and passed out. The villa door had never been closed. When Julian walked over, he immediately saw Sylvia lying in a pool of blood, unconscious. Hannah held the knife and turned her head to look at him. If I say this is all Sylvia's plot, that she stabbed herself. Before she could finish, she was kicked to the ground by Julian. Julian's eyes were red with rage. He snatched the knife from her hand and pressed it against her neck. "Hannah Quinn, how can there be a woman as vicious as you in this world? I really wish I could stab you to death right now." He applied force, and the knife sliced across Hannah's cheek, leaving a long gash. She screamed, covering her injured face with her hand, her eyes full of tears. "Julian, I told you I didn't do it." "No." Before she could finish, she received another slap from Julian. He picked up the unconscious Sylvia from the floor and looked at Hannah, who was slumped by the door. "If anything happens to Sylvia, I want you to pay with your life." With that, he walked away without looking back. For the umpteenth time, Hannah screamed at him. "I didn't do it, however." Julian's car had already sped away. She was left alone in the empty villa, touching the wound on her face, shouting, "It wasn't me," over and over until her heart died. Hospital. Julian waited anxiously outside the operating room. A doctor came out and he hurried over. "How is she?" "She's out of immediate danger, but—" The doctor hesitated. "But what?" "Miss West's body has always been weak, and now her liver is injured. It's best to perform a liver transplant immediately." Remembering the deal with Sylvia earlier, the doctor added, "Your ex-wife is type A blood. We need a type A donor for liver matching." "Type A? Doctor, arrange the surgery immediately." Hannah had stayed at the villa without moving. The decor had changed, the furniture had changed, but she still remembered that once, when Julian was drunk, he took her for the first time in the entryway. On their second wedding anniversary, she made a table full of food. Julian came in, said he was afraid she poisoned it, and flipped the table. So many memories, yet not a single good one. When Julian called, Hannah thought he had discovered something. At his request, she rushed to the hospital. She ignored the wound on her face and ran all the way to Julian. Before she could ask a question, she was dragged into the operating room by nurses. Only then did she learn that Julian was looking for her because Sylvia needed a liver transplant, and she happened to match Sylvia's blood type. Entering the operating room, she heard nurses whispering. Young Master Sterling said to save only Sylvia. This one, dead or alive, doesn't matter. What a dead or alive doesn't matter. "Julian, why are you so cruel to me?" Hannah felt a heaviness in her chest like she was dying. A nurse approached to administer anesthesia. Hannah pushed her away. The nurse had taken Sylvia's money, so naturally, she would tie Hannah to the operating table if she had to. "Miss Quinn, you can't escape." She had never thought of escaping. Hannah's eyes were wet. She dodged the nurse trying to grab her, snatched a scalpel from the tray, and stabbed it toward her own liver without hesitation. The nurse didn't expect this and screamed, running out. Hearing the commotion, Julian rushed in. He saw Hannah holding the scalpel against her liver area. She was already injured, blood soaking her clothes. Hannah looked at him with red, swollen eyes filled with hatred. "Julian, you want my liver?" "Heth, I won't give it." Saying this, she stabbed her liver area again. "Hannah, calm down. This could be fatal. He had never intended for her to die. Just removing a small piece of liver." "Heh, calm down. How can I calm down? Julian, do you know what I've done for you? Do you know what I've lost because of you? And you, in the end, still haven't given me a shred of tenderness. Do you know why I'd rather die than give my liver to Sylvia?" Hannah coughed, spitting out a mouthful of blood, looking desperately at Julian. "Because, rather than dying at Sylvia's hands, I'd better end myself. This heart that loved you, I don't want it anymore. Farewell, Julian. I never owed you anything." Hannah closed her eyes, gripped the scalpel, and stabbed it ruthlessly into her heart. Instantly, blood spurted out like a fountain, dyeing Julian's vision red. "Quick, save her." Hannah lay on the hospital bed, the bloody wound on her face shocking to see, her lips devoid of color. A nurse hurriedly wheeled her into surgery, glancing at Hannah. "Why is it you again?" Her tone held some pity. "I've never seen someone so reckless with their life. Saved from suicide last month and now suicide again. Sai, quick, arrange the surgery." Suicide? Last month, that meant when she was hospitalized after his torture. So what Natalie said about Hannah committing suicide for him was true. Could he have misunderstood her? Julian didn't dare to think. He sat on the bench outside the operating room, feeling exhausted. The doctor bribed by Sylvia saw the surgery stop and was unsure what to do, so he came over to ask, Mr. Sterling, is your ex-wife's surgery continuing?" "Continue what? Why ask me?" Because of the nurse's words, Julian was thinking. Interrupted by the doctor, he was extremely irritable, almost roaring his words, scaring the doctor. Everyone in River City knew Julian had no affection for his ex-wife and loved Sylvia, who had returned from the dead. That was why the doctor agreed to Sylvia's deal for money. Now, it seemed Julian cared about Hannah very much. The doctor wiped away cold sweat. Luckily, the surgery didn't continue, and he didn't take Hannah's life on the table. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how he died. He knew what to do. Sylvia wasn't seriously injured anyway. She wouldn't die. When Patrick and Natalie arrived, Julian had been waiting outside the operating room for an hour. Nurses went in and out. He was anxious. Natalie stepped forward, eyes red, pulling at Julian's clothes. "You scumbag, what did you do to her?" "Hannah, Natalie knelt on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Patrick's gaze was cold, unable to hide the anxiety in his eyes. Looking at Julian guarding Hannah's operating room, he found him in the way and mocked, "President Sterling, if I remember correctly, your precious Sylvia should be in a different operating room." Julian snapped out of it. He was confused with worry. Sylvia was also in surgery. Without a suitable liver source, would she be in danger? He looked back at the operating room door, grabbed a nurse running out, and said, "You must save her, you must." Then he rushed to Sylvia's operating room. When he arrived, he found the surgery was already over. Sylvia, who was supposed to be lying down from surgery, was sitting on the operating table, looking quite energetic. "Didn't we agree to pretend to transplant Hannah's liver to me and then let her die on the operating table? What went wrong? The doctor looked like he had a headache. You told me young Master Sterling didn't care about Hannah, so I agreed. But he cares plenty. Just now when Hannah committed suicide, he went crazy." Sylvia was under anesthesia during surgery, so naturally she didn't know about Hannah's situation. Knowing it now, she instantly became happy. Hannah committed suicide? Really? Really? Stabbed herself many times, and one stab went into the heart. The chances are slim. Great, haha. Hiding behind the door, Julian gripped his right hand tightly with his left to suppress the urge to rush in and beat Sylvia to death. Death was too easy for her. He would torture her slowly. Besides, he had no time to question her now. Hannah was more important. He rushed back to Hannah's operating room, finding the lights off. Faint crying came from inside. People outside were discussing, "What a pity, dying so young." "Yeah, heard she was heartbroken by a man and stabbed herself multiple times with a scalpel." Clutching his heart, walking like a zombie, Julian entered the slightly ajar door. He immediately saw Natalie covering her face and wailing. Patrick was stroking Hannah's face with a sorrowful expression. As for Hannah on the operating table, she looked bathed in a sea of blood. Her small face was pale as paper, and the red scar was thanks to him. Her hands, which used to cook for him, hung limply on both sides of the table, motionless. Julian wanted to step forward to look at this heartbreaking person again. Patrick stood in front of him like a wall, blocking his path. Patrick's fist greeted him unceremoniously. Julian took a heavy punch. He could have dodged, but he didn't. He just hoped this was all a dream, but the pain from the fist was incredibly real. Julian looked up into Patrick's eyes. The other man's eyes were filled with monstrous anger, wishing to cut him into 1,000 pieces. Actually, he wanted to cut himself into 1,000 pieces too. "President Sterling, what, here to see if she's completely dead?" Was he really that bad to Hannah? Did everyone think he wanted her dead? Julian looked miserable. "No, I came to say sorry." Natalie, who had been crying, heard this and rushed up, smiling bitterly. "Sorry? Julian, where were you before? She was married to you for 3 years and suffered for 3 years. You didn't say it. She slit her wrists for you, you didn't say it. Now that she's dead, what's the point of saying sorry?" Yes, no point. But he just wanted to say it. Because perhaps she never owed him, but he owed her. Seeing Hannah lying there quietly, Julian wanted to touch her. His hand was slapped away by Patrick, who spoke coldly, "She is no longer your wife. Julian, you know how you treated her. Do you still have the face to accompany her? Then, when she was my wife, why did you cling to her side, Patrick?" If there was one man Julian hated most in his life, he would say Patrick Pierce without hesitation. Back then, when Hannah disappeared for a year, Patrick disappeared too. Later, when Hannah suddenly appeared in front of him saying she gave her virginity to him, Patrick was there. When he insisted on marrying her to take revenge, Patrick stepped in to stop it, saying Hannah was the best girl in the world and he didn't deserve her. And the first time Hannah proposed divorce was because Patrick came back. Now it was Patrick stopping him from seeing Hannah one last time. "Why?" Patrick laughed in anger. "I'm her brother. I'll cling to her however I want." The depression gathered in Julian's heart turned into anger. He swung his fist at Patrick. "Patrick, I forbid you from clinging to her." Even he didn't know why he was so domineering. Patrick wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked up at Julian. He didn't expect Julian to have such a deep obsession with Hannah. He suddenly leaned closer to Julian and said, "Want to know why Hannah disappeared for a year? Julian, like Hannah, stab yourself 3 times, and I'll tell you everything Hannah didn't dare tell you back then. You might consider it." However, before Patrick could finish speaking, Julian had already grabbed a scalpel from the tray and stabbed it toward his abdomen. Natalie saw it and tried to stop him, but she couldn't match Julian's strength. He raised his hand and brought the blade down, stabbing 3 times. Looking at Patrick, he said, "I did it. Your turn." "Lunatic." Natalie cursed, feeling that the men around Hannah were all abnormal. Patrick didn't expect Julian to be so decisive. He hid the displeasure in his eyes and mocked, "Don't be too shocked by these old stories." Although the 3 stabs didn't hit vital points, Julian would die of blood loss if left untreated for too long. Natalie led him to the treatment room. The doctor looked at the 3 wounds on his body and shook his head. "You young people nowadays are too crazy." While the doctor stitched him up, Julian didn't even frown. He looked at Natalie beside him and said, "How did you meet Hannah?" Natalie fell silent for a while, seeming to recall something. I always liked Patrick, but I didn't dare confess. I only dared to watch him from afar. One day, a lively girl suddenly rushed up to me, put her arm around my shoulder, and smiled. "You like my brother, huh? You look like a good girl, I'll help you." "Wait," Julian stopped her before she finished. "Didn't Hannah like Patrick? Why would she set you up with him?" Natalie looked at Julian like he was an idiot. "The whole world knew Hannah liked you. Did you have no clue?" "Yes, many people told him Hannah liked him. His mother once said, 'Hannah is such a good child. If you marry her, treat her well.'" Natalie also said, "Hannah loves you so much, how can you treat her like this?" Why didn't he believe her love was real back then? Why didn't he believe in her wholehearted devotion? Thinking of how he hadn't given her a good face for the past 3 years, Julian was filled with regret, and tears flowed down. Thinking he was in pain, the doctor asked with concern, "Did the anesthesia wear off? Do you want another shot?" Julian waved his hand to refuse. "Continue." It was better if the anesthesia wore off. He deserved this pain. Natalie looked down at Julian, whose eyes were filled with sorrow and moisture. She realized he didn't seem as heartless toward Hannah as she thought. Perhaps he wasn't that bad. After his wounds were stitched, Julian forgot to take his medicine and rushed over to see Patrick, only to find he was no longer in the operating room and Hannah's body was gone. He asked everyone he met like a madman, but got no answers. Just then, seeing Natalie walking this way, he rushed up and grabbed her shoulders. "Where are they? Where did Hannah go?" Holding the medicine he was supposed to take, Natalie looked at his panicked state. Although Patrick had given orders, she couldn't bear it. She said, "Patrick took Hannah to the crematorium. The body? Keeping it there wasn't good." Before Natalie could finish, Julian rushed out of the hospital in a frenzy, hailed a taxi, and headed for the crematorium in the east of the city. Looking at the medicine left in her hand, Natalie took out her phone and called Patrick. "Patrick, isn't this wrong of us?" Actually, Hannah wasn't dead, just to set her free to let her die in front of Julian. On the phone, Patrick's voice was calm. "Natalie, we are helping Hannah. Helping her escape the prison that is Julian." Patrick was right. She had seen all of Hannah's pain over the past 3 years. Natalie felt Patrick's decision must be right. Without hesitating anymore, she walked out of the hospital gate, hailed a taxi, and headed to the crematorium too. When Julian arrived at the crematorium, he saw Patrick walking out slowly, holding an urn. He instantly became furious, rushing up to grab Patrick's collar. "Why did you burn her so quickly? Why didn't you let me see her a few more times?" He couldn't bear it. He really couldn't bear it. Patrick held the urn steadily, completely disregarding Julian's anger. In fact, he was happier seeing Julian angry, because when he was angry, his expression was so sad. You know, looking at the wound on her face and the misery in her eyes, I couldn't bear it. I wanted to burn away her pain with a fire. Why was she in pain? Julian, you know best. Want to know what happened during the year she was gone? I'll tell you now, Julian intended to grab the urn from Patrick, but froze because of his words. Hannah was raped for you, years ago, at the Venice Hotel. He had accidentally been drugged by women trying to climb into his bed. Burning with desire, he grabbed a woman to relieve himself. After a night of indulgence, he woke up with Sylvia lying next to him. Julian couldn't forget the feeling of that night, the moans of the person beneath him. He thought the woman he wanted was Sylvia, and the one who gave her virginity to him was Sylvia. But it wasn't. Patrick told him. Back then, the person he grabbed was Hannah, the Hannah who had loved following him since childhood. That night, Hannah thought he wanted it, so she gave herself to him. When she woke up, she saw a dangerous text message and went to the appointment in his place. The result was a gang rape. Then she got pregnant. Reluctant to abort a child that might be his, she disappeared for nearly a year to wait for the birth. But she tried so hard for so long, only to give birth to a stillborn baby. Impossible. You're lying to me. Hannah was raped and painfully gave birth to a dead baby. Julian couldn't accept any of this, and the text message he hadn't seen it. He roared at Patrick again, "You're lying." "Lying? Heth, what about you is worth my lying? Now this urn in my hand. Can you still hold it?" The urn in Patrick's hand was aqua blue. That was Hannah's favorite color. Julian reached out, his hand suspended in the air. Images of Hannah grieving beneath him flashed through his mind. His hand finally dropped. Patrick was right, he couldn't hold this urn. He stood on the steps, his body swaying. Patrick watched coldly and extended his right leg in front of Julian. With just a little push, Julian would fall down the half-flight of stairs due to his instability. Combined with the freshly stitched wound on his abdomen, he would either die or be crippled. Julian hurt his Hannah. The Sterling family deserved to die. Patrick reached out his foot and nudged Julian. Julian's body tipped. Just as he was about to fall down the stairs, Natalie rushed over and caught him. "Julian, be careful." Natalie stole a glance at Patrick. Seeing him standing on the steps holding the urn with a calm gaze, she felt dazed. Had she imagined the scene of Patrick trying to trip Julian just now? Cemetery. On the day of Hannah's burial, it rained heavily. Bean-sized raindrops hit the tombstone with a crackling sound. Very few people attended Hannah's funeral. Besides Patrick, there was only Natalie. Julian felt heartbroken at her lonely funeral, but also understood that he caused all of this. He indirectly killed her father, causing her mother to disown her. It was all his fault. Several days later, Half Moon Bay Villa. "Julian, I miss Andy a bit. Can we go see him tomorrow?" Sylvia had begged several times, saying she missed Andy, acting like a mother missing her child. In the past, Julian would have been moved, thinking she was a good mother. But he hadn't forgotten the words she exchanged with the doctor in the operating room that day. He knew this vicious woman wanted Hannah's life. As for why she repeatedly wanted to see Andy, Julian knew her goal. Yesterday, the housekeeper, Mrs. Zhang, reported to him that Sylvia had secretly bought aphrodisiacs. "Okay, let's go tomorrow." Sylvia looked delighted. She could finally go to the Sterling old mansion. She had asked around. Tomorrow was the Sterling family banquet. If everyone in the Sterling family knew she and Julian did that deed, then no one would stop them from getting married. Then she would become the veritable Mrs. Sterling. The next day, Sterling old mansion. Julian went to park the car in the garage. Sylvia waited at the villa entrance to go in with him. While waiting, a limping gardener accidentally bumped into her while trimming the plants. Looking at the gardener's dirty clothes and the smell of pesticide on him, Sylvia was full of disgust. She cursed, "Get lost," and wanted to say more, but seeing Julian walking over after parking, she quickly ran to Julian's side, took his arm, walked past the gardener, and smiled, saying, "Thank you for your hard work." Her hypocritical appearance. Julian saw it all. "Heh, Sylvia, tonight will be unforgettable for you." Sylvia had done her homework. Wanting to curry favor with Julian's mother, old Madame Sterling, she bought an emerald necklace and said sweetly, "Mother, this is a gift. I hope you like it." The old madam didn't even look at it. "I still prefer the necklace Hannah gave me." The old madam said this in front of the servants and maids. Sylvia felt humiliated. She tried to liven up the atmosphere by hugging Andy. Andy shouted as if seeing a ghost, "No," and ran away. The old madam looked at Sylvia and casually remarked, "This child, why does he react like he's seeing a stepmother? Ha ha." Sylvia clearly felt some people suppressing their laughter. She looked at Julian, hoping he would help, but Julian's gaze wasn't on her at all. Sylvia felt like an uninvited guest. Finally, night fell. The Sterling old mansion suddenly became lively. Relatives and invited friends played in the courtyard. Seeing the time was ripe, Sylvia took a glass of strong liquor, put the drug in it, found Julian, and handed it to him. "You play first, I'll go greet the guests. Thanks for the drink, I'll finish it." Julian took the drink, greeting guests, occasionally smiling at her. Sylvia was very satisfied. Seeing the time was about right, she twisted her waist and walked over. Seeing the glass in Julian's hand was empty, she hurriedly took his arm, deliberately rubbing her chest against him. Julian smiled on the surface but was disgusted inside. Holding back his nausea, he leaned into her ear and breathed, "Wait for me in the east warehouse." Sylvia followed Julian's instructions. Waiting for him in the warehouse on the east side of the villa, suddenly the lights went out. Footsteps approached, getting closer. The person smelled strongly of alcohol. It must be Julian. She could clearly hear his heavy breathing. It seemed the aphrodisiac was working. Impatient, Sylvia hugged the person in front of her and kissed his lips. Instantly, sparks flew. He seemed very anxious, lifting her dress, taking off her underwear, and entering her. Sylvia gasped in pain. She wondered if it was because she had been bumped by the gardener smelling of pesticide earlier during the day. She felt like she occasionally smelled pesticide now, but the pleasure left her no time to care about anything else. Just then, voices came from outside. "Listen, is there a sound inside?" Sylvia knew the people she arranged had brought others. Soon, everyone at the banquet would know she was Julian's woman. Then, even if the old madam wasn't happy, the wedding couldn't be avoided. She waited for the moment the lights turned on. Click, the lights turned on. Sylvia looked at the person in front of her, eyes widening. Why is it you? The person wasn't Julian at all, but the gardener she had bumped into earlier. The person she despised. Get out quickly. Thinking of him inside her and the people she arranged coming, she wished she could faint dead away. However, the gardener obviously had no intention of stopping. Holy crap, who's in there doing this kind of thing? Who's inside? The onlookers got closer. Sylvia broke out in a cold sweat and tried to resist. Just then, a familiar voice came. "Sylvia, what are you doing?" Sylvia looked up and saw Julian standing not far away, watching them. She pushed the gardener away, threw herself in front of Julian, and cried, "Julian, he raped me, I've been defiled, I don't want to live." Saying this, she ran to hit her head against the wall, thinking Julian would definitely stop her. But he didn't. She could only hurriedly check her force. Although her head hit the wall, it wasn't serious. Someone whispered, "That woman can really act. With that force, could she die? Tusk tusk." Exactly, what rape? I listened all the way from outside. She sounded so loud, obviously enjoying it. Isn't this Sylvia West? Claims to be Julian's fiancée, actually hooking up with a gardener. Disgusting. With the onlookers commenting one after another and Julian not helping her, Sylvia had no choice but to pretend to faint. Julian looked coldly at her hypocritical acting, a smile appearing on his lips. He ordered the gardener to carry Sylvia back to the gardener's dorm. Want to fake fainting. Then stay in the room full of fertilizer and pesticide and don't wake up. Because of this incident, the dinner ended early. Knowing the old madam was worried, Julian went to see his mother first. Seeing him, his mother excitedly said, "Julian, I found something. Have you noticed? Andy looks a lot like Hannah," with the old madam's reminder. Julian also discovered this issue. Andy indeed looked like Hannah. He had subconsciously assumed Andy was his and Sylvia's child, so he didn't pay much attention to whom Andy resembled. He remembered the words Hannah once said so firmly. Andy is absolutely not mine and Sylvia's child. Maybe Hannah was right. Julian took Andy's and Sylvia's hair and went to the hospital overnight, waiting anxiously for the test results outside. Beside him, Andy instinctively felt some rejection toward the hospital. He kept holding Julian's hand. "Andy, what's wrong?" "Scared." "Stairs, hospital, mom's scared." These few words were very scattered. Julian caught something. He picked Andy up gently. "Andy, don't be scared. Daddy is here. Daddy asks you, did mommy push you down the stairs?" Andy looked very aggrieved. He nodded. Julian's suspicion deepened. Just then, the expedited report came out. He took out the report and looked. Regret welled up in his heart. The mother-son relationship between Andy and Sylvia was not established. Andy wasn't his and Sylvia's child at all. Could Andy be his and Hannah's child? Like that baby boy who supposedly died at birth. Thinking of this, Julian felt there seemed to be a huge conspiracy. He needed to investigate clearly. As for Sylvia, he would definitely expose her true face. The next day, Sylvia pretended to be unconscious in the gardener's dorm all night. The smell in that dorm was too pungent. Just as she was deliberating whether to wake up or not, Julian came, calling her, "Sylvia, Sylvia." She pretended to just wake up, looked at Julian and said, "Julian, yesterday." As she spoke, tears fell. "Quick, come to the hospital with me." "Hospital?" She still had an injury on her head. Sylvia thought Julian cared about her and hurriedly followed, but her clothes were messy and she smelled strange. Thinking of washing up first, Julian had already dragged her into the car. Seeing him care so much, Sylvia was relieved. She thought he didn't stop her yesterday and let the gardener carry her back because he was angry with her. Arriving at the hospital, Sylvia was sent to the operating room by Julian. Along the way, many nurses avoided Sylvia, saying, "Did this person come out of a cesspit? She smells awful." Arriving at the operating room, seeing the scalpel on the tray and the prepared operating table, Sylvia really didn't know what was happening. She asked Julian, "What is this for?" "Andy has kidney failure. The situation is critical. My blood type doesn't match his, so, Sylvia, we need to remove one of your kidneys for a transplant to Andy." No. How could her body suddenly lose a kidney? "Sylvia, Andy is your child. Are you going to watch Andy die?" Andy wasn't her child at all. Sylvia understood that if she said that, she would be finished. A kidney versus the position of Mrs. Sterling, she weighed it. People have 2 kidneys. One can live with one missing. If she gave Andy a kidney, Julian would definitely be grateful to her, maybe marry her. Seeing Julian's anxious look, Sylvia hurried forward, grabbed his arm and said, "Julian, don't worry, I'll give Andy a kidney." Julian's eyes were full of malice. Inside, he said, "Sylvia, I'll make you lose more than just a kidney." Several hours later. After Sylvia finished the surgery, she felt severe pain in her abdomen. Seeing Julian guarding her bedside, she wanted to seek some comfort, but found Julian looked sad. "Julian, what's wrong? Is it Andy?" She thought something happened to Andy. A trace of joy crossed her heart. If Andy died, no one would know he was actually Hannah and Julian's child. Back then, she entered Julian's room after Hannah, saw the text message, deliberately lay next to Julian, and deleted the message. A few days later, seeing Hannah hadn't actively sought Julian, she went to find Hannah and learned some news: Hannah had been raped. While Hannah was missing all those months, Sylvia was suspicious and kept looking for her. Learning she was hiding to give birth, Sylvia was afraid the child might be Julian's. She deliberately bribed the doctor delivering the baby to declare it a stillbirth. Then she took the child for testing, and sure enough, it was Julian's. She waited for a chance to make this child hers. So she waited for Hannah to reappear, deliberately arranged a fake death, and when the child grew old enough to not be recognized easily, she returned. That child was always a ticking time bomb. It would be better if he died. "Don't worry, Andy is fine. But just now, when the doctor was removing your kidney, he said your liver also has a problem and needs a large portion removed." "What?" Sylvia screamed and sat up, pulling her wound. "My liver can't have problems." She felt her body had no issues. Besides, when she deliberately stabbed herself last time, she intentionally avoided organs. So, her liver was fine. The surgery was just to claim Hannah's life. "Sylvia, don't worry. The doctor said just cutting off a piece will be fine." She already lost a kidney, now her liver wouldn't be complete either. She really didn't want to, but since the doctor said so, for her life, she had to do the surgery. The surgery was scheduled for the afternoon. Sylvia was exhausted. Plus, worrying about the surgery last night, she hadn't slept much, so she dozed off. In her daze, she heard people talking. "Young Master Sterling, I was confused back then, I was confused." "Dr. Song, I won't pursue past matters. In the surgery later, cut her liver, as long as she survives. I want her to live the rest of her life in pain." Sylvia couldn't distinguish between dream and reality, feeling it was all a nightmare. In the afternoon, the surgery time was approaching. Sylvia wanted to go to the WC first. She waited a long time, but Julian didn't come, nor did anyone come to help her. She could only endure the pain and lean against the wall to get to the toilet. In the hospital lobby, she saw Julian holding Andy's hand. Andy was holding a lollipop, eating happily. Wasn't Andy in kidney failure? Surgery in the morning, and now jumping around alive and kicking? Impossible. Sylvia remembered the words she heard in her dream, thinking of the malice in those words. A chill rose through her body. Were those words true? Julian wanted to remove her liver, wanted her to suffer for the rest of her life? Why? She wanted to flee. Just then, Dr. Song walked over. "Miss West, it's time for surgery." "No, I won't have surgery." She wasn't sick, and Andy wasn't sick either. It was all intentional by Julian. Sylvia's voice was loud. Julian heard it and walked over holding Andy. Surgery time is almost up. Take her in. Julian, I'm not going. I'm not sick. Sylvia, be good. The doctor said last time when you stabbed your liver, because a transplant wasn't done in time, hidden dangers remained. It must be removed now, or it will be life-threatening. Doctors and nurses dragged Sylvia toward the operating room. She screamed, "My liver is fine, I didn't stab the liver last time." Heck, Sylvia, you finally exposed yourself. So, everything was your design to frame Hannah. You killed Hannah. Julian's eyes were full of pain, deep self-blame for Hannah's matters. Only then did Sylvia realize Julian had fallen in love with Hannah. Maybe from the moment he divorced Hannah, or more certainly after Hannah died. So yesterday, being caught with the gardener by everyone was also arranged by Julian. He told her to wait in the East warehouse. Was Julian avenging Hannah? Sylvia panicked and knelt on the ground with a thud. Julian, I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated Hannah like that, but I love you. I love you too much. Please let me go. Julian came up to her and grabbed her hair. You lied to me, said it was you at the Venice Hotel that night, pushed Andy down the stairs, stabbed yourself all to frame Hannah. You even wanted to kill her in the operating room. How can I let you go? A chill rushed from the soles of her feet to her scalp. So Julian knew everything? Sylvia's eyes were full of tears. She cried, Julian, I was blinded by love. Let me go. Look, Andy is this big. He still needs a mother. Looking at Sylvia's desperate struggle, Julian felt incredibly disgusted. Andy's mother? You really dare to speak. Who Andy's child really is, I believe no one knows better than you, Sylvia West. Take her in quickly, don't delay the surgery. Julian finally said, Sylvia, you killed Hannah, this is what you deserve to bear. Andy's identity was also known by Julian. She was definitely dead this time, but the blame couldn't be placed entirely on her. Julian, Hannah committed suicide. She killed herself in despair over your love. It was you, Julian Sterling, who killed her, not me. Ha ha ha. Yes, the one who killed Hannah was him. He never shirked that. That was why he stabbed himself 3 times, without hesitation. At this moment, the injured spot on his abdomen ached faintly, but what hurt most was his heart. Because of Sylvia's words, Julian missed Hannah crazily. In the past, he would wash away the insults and misunderstandings others had for her, and he would compensate the Quinn family. After leaving the hospital, Julian went straight to the Quinn home. Zoe Quinn saw it was him and started cursing through the door. Why are you here? Haven't you harmed our Quinn family enough? My daughter is dead too, now you want to watch me die? Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, who's your mom? Zoe's words got uglier and uglier. Julian endured silently. Finally, seeing Zoe had cursed enough and stopped, he passed the documents in his hand through the door crack to her. I'm very sorry about the Quinn family matters. You can scold or hit me however you want, as long as you're happy. But I hope, Mom, you won't wrong Hannah anymore. She wasn't a loose woman, nor a woman who plotted against friends. I spread all those rumors. She was actually a good girl, always going to the temple to pray for you. When it rained, she always worried about your rheumatism. Zoe listened to Julian's repentant words, looking at the documents in her hand, 10 of Sterling Group shares, equivalent to the assets of 10 Quinn families. Sigh, why bother? I know my husband wasn't killed by you, you don't have to. Mom, why do you say that? Even he was convinced he caused her dad's death, feeling guilty about it. But now Zoe said her dad didn't die because of him. Zoe's expression was sorrowful, probably thinking of that poor daughter because of Julian's words. When losing someone, one always realizes something. For instance, she actually cared about her daughter. She slowly said, before Hannah passed away, she called me. She said, Mom, Dad died because of me. It was Sylvia West who used my matters to provoke Dad, angering him to death. So, before she committed suicide, she was actually thinking of clearing his name. He, this devil, had done all bad things to her. Yet she cared about him so much from beginning to end. Julian pounded his chest heavily. His heart, there, felt exceptionally painful. 5 years later. In these 5 years, fearing Zoe would be alone, Julian often brought Andy to the Quinn residence to see her. Although he had signed the divorce agreement with Hannah, he had already torn it up. In his heart, he still treated Hannah as Mrs. Sterling. Mom, let Andy stay with you for a bit first. I have some company matters to deal with. Julian still called her Mom. Zoe was used to him calling her that and told him to be careful on the road. When Julian walked to the car, he realized that just now, lingering in Hannah's room looking at her photos, he was distraught and left his keys in the room. He had to go back to get them. "My good darling, don't cry, you are a child with a mommy. Other kids have one hand held by daddy and one hand held by mommy. Andy has no mommy to hold one hand. Andy has no mommy, boo-hoo." Andy was already in the first grade of elementary school. Since kindergarten, he had been talking about mommy. Now he talked about it even more. Julian felt guilty and his steps stopped. Everyone says Andy's mommy is dead. Andy's loud crying came from the room. Julian felt depressed and uncomfortable, realizing Hannah had been gone for 5 years. "Andy, darling, don't cry. Grandma will tell you a secret. Actually, your mother, my daughter, isn't dead." Just as Zoe finished speaking, someone rushed in from outside. It was Julian, who should have left. How did he come back? Wasn't he gone? "Mom, what did you mean just now? Hannah, is she not dead?" Zoe panicked. Patrick had warned her that Julian must not know about this. She thought Patrick didn't dare let Julian know because he feared Julian would hurt Hannah and the Quinn family. But observing over these 5 years, she found Julian had Hannah in his heart and loved her. That was why he always brought her little grandson to see her. The current Julian, even if he knew Hannah was alive, wouldn't do anything bad. Besides, he heard what she secretly told Andy just now. She definitely couldn't hide it. Seeing Zoe remain silent, Julian became agitated. With a thud, he knelt in front of Zoe. "Mom, is Hannah still alive? I beg you, tell me quickly, please." "All right, get up quickly. I'll tell you." Julian sped all the way to the airport, his hands gripping the steering wheel, trembling with impatience. Hannah wasn't dead. His Hannah wasn't dead. Just then, his assistant Simon Ray called. Sterling's subsidiary, Ting Group, was signing a relatively important contract today. The partner company's representative had arrived, but Julian still hadn't shown up. As soon as the call connected, Simon said urgently, "Young Master Sterling, the representative from Huyen Company is here. You, cancel today's contract signing. Another day. I have something urgent right now." But Huyen Company was a state-owned enterprise with industries all over the world and government investment institutions behind it. Julian had said from the start that courtesy must be shown to government units. But now he wasn't coming. What urgent matter made him care so much? Simon was awkward. Looking at the tall figure standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window the representative sent by Huyen Group, he apologized. "President Pierce, I'm terribly sorry. President Sterling has an unexpected matter and can't come. Very sorry." Peter Pierce maintained a smile, looking at Simon. "Then another day." Then his gaze looked out at the world outside the window. The most prosperous CBD in River City belonged to the Sterling family's assets, and all this should have belonged to the Pierce family. His foolish nephew hadn't made any moves in recent years, just staying in Kingsbury watching the scenery. But Peter couldn't wait. He had to take back everything that should belong to the Pierce family. Julian standing up Huyen wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Kingsbury. Julian bought the earliest flight and flew to Kingsbury that very day. Before boarding, he asked a friend in Kingsbury to investigate. In Kingsbury, there were too many people named Hannah Quinn. There were 18 in total. Although difficult, this was the only way now. Zoe knew Hannah was alive because once, the news broadcasted that Zoe was ill. Hannah, worried about her mother, called to ask, and that was how Zoe knew her daughter was alive. And she only knew Hannah was alive. She didn't know exactly where her daughter was because Patrick, worried about Hannah, had kept her hidden. Not knowing Hannah's specific location, Julian could only check one by one. All afternoon without stopping, until 10 p.m., he finally checked 17 addresses. None were the person he was looking for. Julian panicked. Only one left. Maybe she changed her name and wasn't called Hannah Quinn. What if the last one wasn't her either? Walking to Building 13 of Wanjia Garden. Unit 1803, Building 13, was the address of the last Hannah Quinn. He leaned against the entrance door and smoked a cigarette, feeling panic in his heart. Just then, a little girl about 5 years old ran out, put her hands on her hips in front of him, pouted, and said, "Uncle, smoking is bad for your health." Because of Andy. He instinctively liked children. He hurriedly put out the cigarette, patted her little head, and said, "Uncle knows he's wrong, won't do it again." Remembering the lollipop in his pocket prepared for Andy, he took out a lollipop and handed it to her. Here, this is Uncle's reward for you. Kiki, why did you run so fast? You didn't wait for Mommy. Julian felt this voice was incredibly familiar. The girl named Kiki heard her mother calling and rushed into the newcomer's arms, saying sweetly, Mommy, an uncle wants to give me a lollipop. It's the Pico-chan brand I like. Can I take it? Didn't Mommy say not to take things from strangers? But Mommy, I think that Uncle looks very familiar. He doesn't look like a bad guy. While the two were talking, Julian watched quietly from the side, feeling the scene was very heartwarming. Andy must have always dreamed of throwing himself into Mommy's arms and acting spoiled like this one day. He kept watching the newcomer, holding a sliver of expectation, waiting for her to look up. Finally getting that glance when she looked up, it made him so happy he almost cried. This woman always appeared in his dreams, making him love and hurt. Hannah, is it you? Is it you? Julian stumbled toward Hannah, slapping himself first to confirm he wasn't dreaming. Walking in front of Hannah, he wanted to reach out and touch her. Hannah protected Kiki in her arms and took a big step back. No, I'm not Hannah Quinn, I'm not. She was too scared. In the years in Kingsbury, she had lived in fear, afraid Julian would find her and continue to take revenge on the Quinn family. Patrick said Julian visited Zoe from time to time. The news report about Zoe being ill last time was also forced by Julian. She was so afraid. If Julian knew Kiki was his child, would he kill Kiki? The more she thought, the more scared she became. Hannah closed her eyes and waved her arms to stop Julian from approaching. It seemed to have some effect, at least Julian never grabbed her. Mommy, this uncle seems unwell. Only then did Hannah realize that at some point, Julian had squatted on the ground, hands clutching his abdomen, cold sweat on his forehead. His body tilted and he fell to the ground, motionless. Fainted? Fainted was good. This way, she could escape again. Hannah took Kiki's hand and walked toward the gate. Kiki pouted. Mommy, are you going to leave him to die? Kiki, this uncle isn't a good person. 5 years ago, how Julian treated her. Those past events were too painful. With just a little thought, she recalled everything, feeling the old wounds ache faintly. She also knew clearly that she was hurt to the core by this man. He stabbed himself 3 times, and finally, she stabbed her own heart. She thought she would die, but she was a rare case of situs inversus her heart was on the right side. So the knife stab to the left chest didn't take her life. It was her brother, Patrick, who arranged her fake death to help her escape the sea of bitterness. Because as long as she lived, Julian would want to cut out her liver for Sylvia. Such a man, she had no reason to save him. Hannah pulled Kiki's small hand, arrived at the elevator, and pressed the up button. She had to pack quickly and flee to a place Julian couldn't find. Ding, the elevator door opened, and she pulled Kiki inside. Apartment. Looking at Julian, whom she had carried onto the bed, Hannah felt she must have been kicked in the head by a donkey. Minutes ago, she was determined to ignore him and take Kiki to a safe place immediately. But she couldn't let go in her heart, because a scene kept flashing in her mind, Julian's hand trying to grab her, wearing a ring on the ring finger. It was actually the wedding ring from when Julian and she got married. In the past, during 3 years of marriage to Julian, he never wore it. As if only she kept the marriage vow and gave love. And now, she found Julian was wearing the ring. Out of curiosity or something else, Hannah finally rushed out of the elevator. She and Kiki struggled to carry Julian back to the apartment. She had carried a drunk Julian back to the villa many times before. Carrying him this time, Hannah realized Julian seemed much thinner. At this moment, he lay on the bed, looking sickly. Hannah realized when carrying him just now that he was covered in sweat, and the hand hanging off the bed indeed wore the ring. Hannah wasn't mistaken. Julian was in pain, probably a stomach ailment acting up. Hannah remembered when Sylvia fell off the cliff and the body wasn't recovered, police declared her dead. Julian drank daily. Even after forcing Hannah to marry him, he always came home smelling of alcohol to torture her in bed. Plus, Julian didn't have the habit of eating breakfast. Going hungry too long caused stomach pain and gastritis. Hannah had a habit of stocking medicine, and because of Julian's habit, she subconsciously bought medicine for stomach pain and gastritis. She hurriedly got the medicine and fed it to Julian. Kiki followed her around, occasionally popping up with a mischievous remark. Does Mommy like Uncle? No. How could she dare to like him? Then is this Uncle my daddy? No, Mommy, when you lie, you love to drink water. Just now with don't like, you drank half a glass. With no, you drank another half. No such thing. Hannah poured another glass of water. Kiki's eyes rolled around, smiling. Mommy, look, you're drinking again? Cough. Hannah coughed violently, thankful Julian was asleep or she wouldn't know how to face him. Kiki was indeed his child. Seeing her choking, Kiki stopped teasing her. Tilting her head to look at Julian fast asleep on the bed, she smoothed the wrinkles on his brow and smiled. This uncle feels so kind. Kind. Kiki was indeed her daughter, just as blind as she was. While everyone thought Julian was cold and heartless, she felt he was kind. After 5 years, Julian indeed had changed to become very kind. For Kiki's sake, let him stay the night. Hannah tucked Julian in, then carried Kiki to the guest bedroom. After working all evening, it was past midnight. She and Kiki fell asleep as soon as their heads hit the pillows. Half asleep, she felt a pair of hands hugging her. She thought it was Kiki and didn't mind. The next day, seeing Julian's familiar face magnified in front of her, Hannah was shocked and almost rolled off the bed. Julian's long arms scooped her up and pulled her back. Their posture was a bit ambiguous. Julian's hand was still on her waist, tickling slightly. What do you want? Before she could scold him, she was hugged tightly in his arms. Hannah, let me hug you. I missed you so much. The current Julian wasn't the one she knew. His embrace was warm, his movements not rude like before, but very gentle. And his words were deeply affectionate, as if he loved her. Hannah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you before. It was all my fault. Please forgive me. Didn't Patrick say Julian was still retaliating against the Quinn family and wanted her dead? But why did Julian feel completely different to her? Did he know about those misunderstandings? Hannah, the one I love is you. His words were soft, like a spring breeze in April, bringing a trace of warmth to Hannah's heart. Just as she was about to say something, Kiki suddenly woke up. How can you cuddle and hug in front of a child? Abusing single dogs? This Kiki, acting like a little adult. Hannah quickly escaped from Julian's arms, looking unhappy. Awake! If you're awake, leave. Although her tone was cold, Julian caught a trace of caring in her eyes. She still cared about him. If she proudly refused to admit it, what harm was there in him being shameless? Julian hurriedly clutched his stomach. I haven't eaten since noon yesterday. In front of Kiki, do you have the heart to chase me away? Kiki also chimed in. Mommy, just keep Uncle for breakfast. Several days later. Julian Sterling, you're still not leaving? He was simply too shameless, sticking around for a full 3 days. Patrick would be back soon. If brother knew she kindly sheltered Julian, he would definitely be furious. Not only did Julian refuse to leave, but he also got handsy with her. Helpless, Hannah hid in Patrick's study and locked the door, not letting Julian in. Living with Patrick in this simple apartment for 5 years, he still treated her like a sister. It was Hannah's first time in Patrick's study. It was very clean. Brother kept it meticulous. Hannah picked a book from the shelf and flipped through it casually. 2 pages were stuck together. Hannah opened the drawer to get a cutter. In Patrick's drawer, she found a document. It seemed Patrick read it often. A corner of the folder was faded. Out of curiosity, Hannah took out the document and opened it. After reading it, the document fell from her hand. Just then, she heard the sound of a heavy object hitting the floor outside and Kiki crying. She hurriedly put the document back in the drawer, composed her flustered heart, and walked out. As soon as she reached the living room, she saw Patrick and Julian fighting. Both were bruised. Patrick wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Julian Sterling, you still have the face to show up. Julian rubbed his swollen cheek. Why can't I show up? Since I know she's alive, I should take her back. Andy needs a mother. Patrick threw another punch. Stop disturbing her. Believe it or not, I'll kill you. Julian was thoroughly enraged too. He was jealous that Patrick lived with Hannah for 5 years and angry that Kiki actually called Patrick Daddy Pat. Thinking Kiki might be Hannah and Patrick's child, anger burned away all reason. Kill me? Come on then, he roared. Although, in Julian's view, Patrick was just speaking out of anger to scare him, Hannah knew clearly that Patrick's desire to kill Julian was real. Seeing that document, she also understood why Patrick kept stopping her from being with Julian. Because the Pierce family and Sterling family shared an irreconcilable blood feud. The document just now recorded that Patrick's father, Pei Tian, and Julian's father, Li Shaoxing, founded the Ting Group together. To swallow the Ting Group alone, Li Xiaoxing poisoned Pei Tian. Pei Tian, having taken sleeping pills, died in a traffic accident, and the Ting group fell into the Sterling family's hands. Later, under Julian's management, the Ting group became the #1 enterprise in River City. Li Xiaoxing died of illness not long after Pei Tian passed away. So, Patrick transferred all hatred onto Julian. Come to think of it, Julian had several car accidents. Back then, Hannah thought it was due to Julian drunk driving. Now thinking about it, those accidents might not have been simple. Patrick really wanted Julian dead to avenge his father. Kiki's crying got louder. Hannah hurriedly went over, picked up Kiki, and shouted at Patrick and Julian. "Have you argued enough?" Julian quickly lowered his fists. "Sorry." Seeing Hannah come out, he rushed to her side. "Hannah, come back with me. I'll treat you well for the rest of my life." His tone held a plea. Through interactions these past few days, she found Julian had changed a lot. He became gentle and even acted spoiled. He would serve her rice and cover her with a blanket at night. These were treatments the old her never had. It wasn't that she didn't want to trust him one more time. It wasn't that she didn't want to go back with him, but her peripheral vision caught Patrick's hateful gaze. Looking at the hand Julian prepared to extend, she smiled coldly. "Julian Sterling, why should I go back with you?" Hannah still had feelings for him, Julian was certain. Otherwise, he couldn't have stayed in her apartment for days. He felt that within days, Hannah would definitely go back with him. He could be patient and stay with her a bit longer. But Patrick's appearance worried him, and Patrick's possessiveness toward Hannah made Julian jealous. He wanted to take her back urgently, hence that pleading look. He didn't dare be certain she would go with him, but he believed she would hesitate. However, he guessed wrong. Result: Hannah Quinn spoke with a tone of absolute resolve. "Hannah, I know you're lying to me, aren't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have saved me." "Yes, I did save you, but that was only because I couldn't leave you to die in front of Kiki. I am a mother, and I need to set an example for my child. Julian Sterling, have you forgotten how you treated me in the past?" She clutched her chest. "Right here, I took a knife for you. Yes, the past was my fault. I know stabbing myself 3 times wasn't enough to atone for it, but as long as you stay by my side, I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Julian stabbed himself 3 times? She actually didn't know about that, but now was not the time to care about such things. She had to make Julian leave. "Julian, your atonement comes too late. I told you back then I don't want this heart that loved you anymore. I don't want to love you. Now I just want to live a peaceful life. If you truly feel guilty, then please, don't disturb my life anymore, okay?" Hannah's repeated rejections felt like death by 1,000 cuts to Julian's heart. He finally understood the grievance and pain Hannah had felt all those years ago. Indeed, how could a man like him easily earn forgiveness? But the person he loved deeply was right in front of him. How could he give up? "Hannah, you're saying this on purpose, right? Come with me. I can give you everything you want." "Please." Before Julian could finish, a sharp slap landed across his face. Hannah had hit him. "The person who can give me what I want isn't you. It's Patrick Pierce. I know you've been guessing who Kiki's father is for the past few days, afraid to ask. Now I'm telling you, Kiki is Patrick's child. I love him. I've been living with him for all these years. When things aren't confirmed, one can still comfort oneself." But now that the truth was revealed, Julian's mind buzzed violently, echoing one sentence. "Kiki is Patrick's child. I love him." Hannah had worried that Julian would question her further, making her anxious about how to drive him away. Fortunately, after hearing that Kiki was Patrick's child, Julian fell silent for a moment, then slammed the door and left. The image of the complex, agonized look he gave her before leaving remained burned in Hannah's mind. Patrick Pierce looked at Hannah. After Julian left, she just held Kiki, barely speaking. Kiki slowly recovered from the shock. "Mommy, why did you lie? I'm not Daddy Patrick's child, I know that." Yes, she had lied. To confirm something clearly, Hannah stroked Kiki's head and said, "Kiki was frightened just now. Didn't the school assign homework? Go do it quickly." Kiki wanted to say that with Uncle Julian's help, she had already finished all her homework. But seeing Daddy Patrick's dark eyes and her mommy's worried gaze, she obediently went to her room and closed the door. Only Hannah and Patrick were left in the living room. Patrick finally asked the question he had been holding back. "Why did you say Kiki is my child?" Hannah looked sorrowful, clutching her chest where her heart beat faster because of the lies she was about to tell. Brother Pat, he hurt me too deeply. 5 years have passed, yet I still have nightmares. He got rid of my baby and wanted to take my liver for Sylvia West. He said he loved me, but maybe that was just another way to torture me. Brother, I'm scared. I don't want to go back. Patrick Heartache pulled her into his embrace. Okay, we won't go back. Internally, however, he felt anxious. He had a feeling Hannah was hiding something from him. For several days, Hannah stayed in the apartment, behaving very docilely. Before Patrick went out, she would always ask where he was going, like a wife constantly concerned about her husband. Patrick found this very reassuring. At the dinner table, Hannah put his favorite dish in his bowl. He felt happy. Just then, his phone rang. He rejected the call from Peter Pierce. He didn't need to guess to know his uncle was urging him to return to the country. For the past few days, via text or call, his uncle had been pushing him, saying the time was ripe to take back the Sterling Group. But he couldn't bear to leave this happy time. It felt like after 5 years, Hannah was finally starting to accept him. His uncle's phone kept ringing, and Hannah seemed to notice. Patrick, helpless, used the excuse of an urgent file to go to the study and answered the call. I won't go back. Patrick, you can't give up everything for a woman. Do you remember how your father died? Pei Tian, his father, was murdered. He hadn't forgotten that, but Uncle Peter, 8 years ago, we thought about taking him down, but what was the result? If I hadn't arrived in time, Hannah would have been raped by your men. We couldn't take down Julian Sterling back then, so what makes you think we can now? In the end, it's still for a woman. Back then, because I knew her parents raised you, I didn't act against her. Thinking back now, I should have acted sooner. Peter, beep beep beep. The other side hung up. Angry, Patrick slammed his phone onto the desk. The drawer was jarred open by the impact. He noticed the drawer hadn't been fully closed. He remembered closing it before his business trip. He pulled the drawer open and clearly saw the files inside had been moved, especially the file containing information about his father's death. Someone had read this file. He was certain. Was it Hannah? Patrick was almost certain Hannah had seen the file. Because she had seen this file, her behavioral changes over the past few days now had a logical explanation. That day when Hannah drove Julian away, Patrick had found it strange. She was afraid of Julian and didn't want to see him, yet in Patrick's eyes, what he saw wasn't fear, but reluctance to let go. Hannah still had Julian in her heart. Patrick knew this. She insisted on giving birth to Kiki, Julian's child. Over the past 5 years, she never gave him a chance, always calling him brother. It all proved she couldn't let go of Julian, combined with the tampered file. It was clear Hannah didn't drive Julian away because she hated him. She did it because she saw the file, feared Patrick would do something to Julian, and decided to stay by Patrick's side to monitor him and prevent danger from befalling Julian. Hannah Quinn, how could you do this to me? Patrick gritted his teeth, his heart filled with hatred. He crumbled the thick stack of papers in his hand. He took out his phone again and called Peter. Uncle, I'll return to River City tomorrow. I will definitely destroy Julian Sterling. He shouldn't have forgotten the vengeance for his father's murder. Night fell. Patrick was packing his luggage item by item. Hannah cut some fruit and walked into his room. Brother, are you packing? Let me help you. She folded the white shirt taken from the closet for him and asked casually, Why are you packing? I'm returning to River City tomorrow. The words River City made Hannah's heart tremble. The white shirt she had just folded fell to the floor, unfolding. She hid her panic. Brother, why did you decide to go back to River City? Because there are some matters to deal with. Matters to deal with? To deal with Julian? Hannah was truly worried. She picked up the shirt, shook it out, and said, Since you're going back to River City, Kiki and I will go back too. His thoughts in the study were just guesses, but now it seemed his guesses were correct. Hannah, weren't you afraid of Julian? Scared to return to the city where he lives? I am afraid, but I'm also afraid of living alone with Kiki in a strange city. Patrick looked at her. Her eyes were dodging his. Heth, for Julian's sake, she would actually lie to her brother who had doted on her since childhood. A fire of rage rose in Patrick's heart, no longer suppressible. He suddenly grabbed Hannah's hands. He pushed her onto the soft bed. His large hands pinned her down. Hannah couldn't move at all. Patrick's hot body pressed against hers. Hannah felt her heart about to leap out of her throat. She said in a panic, Brother, what's wrong with you? His usually gentle voice turned cold. Hess, afraid of living alone with Kiki. I think you're afraid I'll go back to River City and do something to Julian Sterling what is so good about him. He hurt you so much, yet you still think of him, love him. I've silently given everything for you for so many years, Hannah Quinn. In the end, you actually lied to me for him, the Patrick in front of her felt, incredibly unfamiliar to Hannah. Lied? Did he discover her intent? Hannah wanted to explain that she didn't mean it, but Patrick's kiss pressed down on her lips, silencing her. His rough movements clearly conveyed his anger, and his hand reached into her clothes. Hannah never expected that Patrick, who always had boundaries and treated her like a sister, would do something like this. Finding an opening, she shoved Patrick away with all her might. When he tried to lean in again, she slapped him across the face. She screamed, "How are you any different from the Julian of the past right now? Back then, he treated me that way because of a misunderstanding. But you, why are you doing this to me?" The man in front of her had red rims around his eyes. He had clearly been crying. His clothes were messy. Patrick suddenly woke up to reality. What was he trying to do just now? Was he about to force himself on her? Hannah didn't stay a moment longer. She opened the door, ready to leave. Patrick knew that once Hannah walked out that door, she would definitely go find Julian. Then there would be nothing left between them. How could he accept that? "Hannah Quinn, if you walk out of this room and return to Julian Sterling's side, I will immediately go back to River City and perish together with him." Today's Patrick was too unfamiliar to her. Hannah stopped in her tracks. "What exactly do you want to do? As long as you stay by my side and pretend to love me, I won't take Julian's life. However, he would make Julian wish he were dead. Julian never harmed you. Why do you insist on putting him to death?" Hannah had seen the file. She didn't understand. That was a matter of the previous generation. Why did Patrick have to be this way? That old man deserved to die. And Julian carries the surname Sterling. "You're being unreasonable." Hannah wanted to go tell Julian these things so he could be on guard. Behind her, Patrick's cold voice sounded again. "Hannah Quinn, don't think I'm joking. I mean what I just said." Hannah recalled the dangerous incidents Julian had encountered in the past. Perhaps the person who hurt him was Patrick. So, now that Patrick had shown his cards, he was capable of anything. She couldn't let Julian fall into danger. Moreover, all of this seemed to be partly her fault. She shouldn't have lied to Patrick. Several days later, River City. The Sterling Group held its year-end gala. Business owners who had collaborated with Sterling Group raised their glasses to congratulate the company on becoming the #1 enterprise in River City. Julian Sterling toasted everyone in return. Suddenly, a commotion stirred in the crowd. "Isn't that Patrick Pierce, missing for 5 years and now he's back?" "Yes, who is that beside him? His fiancée." Everyone's gaze shifted over. Julian also looked up. Once he did, he couldn't look away. He saw Patrick wearing a black suit, smiling politely at the business owners coming to greet him. Standing beside him was Hannah Quinn, whom he hadn't seen since returning to River City. She wore an aqua blue evening gown. The glittering crystals on the dress made her look even more radiant and moving. Actually, Julian had known all along that Hannah and Patrick had returned to River City. The moment he heard the news, his heart ached, and he wanted to rush over to see her immediately. But the memory of how she drove him away that day surfaced, making him bear not to disturb her. Also, Hannah's sudden change in attitude made Julian suspicious. For instance, she explicitly said she wouldn't return to River City, yet here she was. Did she come back for Patrick? The hand holding his wine glass tightened, involuntarily. At this moment, Patrick walked straight up to Julian like a victor, pulled Hannah closer into his arms, and laughed. "I came uninvited. President Sterling isn't unhappy, is he?" Rage flared in Julian's heart, but he maintained his smile and didn't answer. He glanced at Hannah out of the corner of his eye and noticed she seemed afraid of something, deliberately avoiding his gaze. After the greeting, Patrick walked straight to Peter Pierce, who was standing near Julian. "Peter, regarding the Skywater City project, can we collaborate?" The Skywater City real estate project was originally a collaboration between Peter's company, Pierce Holdings, and the Sterling Group. Patrick poaching a partner so publicly was a blatant slap in the face. Everyone knew Julian's temper. Back when the Song family tried to intercept a project from the Sterling Group, Julian didn't hesitate to pay double the price to win it back, and then suppress the Song family until they no longer existed in River City. Everyone watched Julian's reaction cautiously. They found that his mind didn't seem to be on Patrick's words. Instead, he was looking in a certain direction, revealing a slight smile. His assistant, Simon Ray, was unhappy. He leaned close to Julian's ear and whispered, "Mr. Sterling, what does Patrick Pierce mean by this? Publicly poaching our partner? Our company has invested a lot in this project." Only then did Julian withdraw his gaze and look at Patrick. Peter said, "President Pierce, last time I came specifically to sign with Julian, but for such a big project, he actually stood me up. I assume he isn't very keen on cooperating. Now that you've asked, I am naturally willing." The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder. Hannah's palms were sweaty. Her compromise and willingness to pretend to be Patrick's girlfriend had stopped Patrick from murdering Julian. But she couldn't stop Patrick from reclaiming things that belonged to the Pierce family, like the company. She was truly worried about a conflict arising between Julian and Patrick. She was somewhat afraid of Julian's reaction. Julian maintained his smile. "Since President Pierce and Peter hit it off so well, Sterling Group will yield this project." Yield the project. Simon whispered a reminder, "Mr. Sterling, we've already invested $1 billion in this project." Patrick didn't expect Julian to be so agreeable. Without needing any underhanded tactics with Peter, Julian agreed. He reminded him, "President Sterling, it seems your company has invested $1 billion in this project." Julian smiled. "It's just $1 billion. Sterling Group can afford the loss." While speaking, he kept looking at Hannah. He took in every expression on her face. Naturally, his suspicions deepened. Just now, when Patrick said the sentence about the $1 billion, he clearly saw a flash of worry in Hannah's eyes. She was worried about him. He knew it clearly. So, regarding why she drove him away that day and why she was now by Patrick's side. Whatever the hidden reason was, he would investigate and find out. As for this billion-dollar project, what did it matter if he let Patrick have it? Consider it a gift to him, for Hannah's sake. "President Sterling is truly generous. I really thank you. If you want to thank me, let your female companion dance with me." Although it sounded like a request for permission, Julian had already pulled Hannah from Patrick's grasp. His grip was so strong that the moment Hannah left Patrick's arms, she crashed into Julian's chest, drawing envious looks. Someone in the crowd recognized something. "Look at that person, isn't that Hannah Quinn?" Hannah Quinn, Julian Sterling's ex-wife. How could it be that frumpy woman? Indeed, who would have thought that the glamorous woman now was the Hannah Quinn who had once been the laughingstock of so many? Julian frowned. To shut out the gossip, he led Hannah directly onto the dance floor. Holding her waist, they spun. Patrick wanted to stop them, but he was a step too late. Peter also deliberately held him back, wanting to discuss future plans against Sterling Group. Hannah was flustered, because the hands around her waist were too hot, although she had been married to Julian for 3 years, and they had done that countless times. But in bed, she was just a tool for his release. Aside from in bed, when had they ever been this intimate? She was naturally panicked, and a blush rose on her face. Seeing her like this, Julian was very satisfied. He deliberately leaned close to her ear and said, "Are you being coerced?" Asked so suddenly, Hannah was unprepared. Due to her panic, she twisted her ankle and was about to fall. Julian lifted her up, letting her lean her weight against him. He smiled at her. "You like me?" Hannah didn't understand. Was that a question or a statement? She wanted to refute, but the music ended. Julian bowed like a gentleman and said, "Thank you," then walked away, leaving Hannah standing in the dance floor, bewildered. At this moment, Patrick walked over. Hannah's face instantly turned angry. "Brother, did you have to do that?" "Yes, this is what the Sterling family owes me." Hannah didn't want to say anything more. With an indifferent tone, she said, "I've finished my task, I'm leaving." Patrick called after her, but Hannah couldn't be bothered to respond. She got straight into a taxi, told the driver to drive immediately, and sped away. He watched her retreating figure. Thinking of her swaying figure on the dance floor with Julian just now, he frowned. Causing Julian to lose $1 billion didn't make him happy at all. Leaving the banquet, Julian said to Simon Ray, who was following him, "Investigate Patrick Pierce thoroughly." He seemed to remember something. "Peter's last name is also Pierce. Check him too. I want results immediately." Because he needed to know the reason Hannah was being coerced as soon as possible. Then Julian drove home alone. While driving, Hannah's image kept playing in his mind, her aqua blue evening gown, so brilliant. After living with her for so many years, he only now realized she was beautiful, very beautiful. Distracted for a moment, he didn't see the road conditions clearly. A car suddenly darted out from the right, and he couldn't dodge in time. The next day, Hannah was preparing breakfast. Yesterday, after leaving the banquet, she returned to the villa she rented in River City. When Patrick had no instructions, she stayed here. She was just about to cut fruit. An urgent news report played on the TV. Last night, Sterling Group heir Julian Sterling was involved in a car accident. He is currently at St. Anne's Hospital. The knife fell. Because of her carelessness, Hannah cut her hand, but she didn't care at all. Her brain was buzzing. She couldn't hear what else the news anchor was saying. She was wearing house slippers and forgot to change them. She was about to call Kiki when she remembered Kiki went to Patrick's place yesterday. She beat her own head, realizing that after dancing with Julian yesterday, she had lost her soul. She frantically hailed a taxi and rushed to St. Anne's Hospital. Arriving at the reception, she was so anxious she could barely speak clearly. "Excuse me, which room is Julian Sterling in?" Hannah went to the second-floor VIP ward the receptionist told her about. She pushed the door open. Julian's head was wrapped in bandages, and he lay motionless on the bed. She walked closer and whispered, "Julian." No reaction. The VIP ward was quiet, save for the beeping of instruments. "Julian?" Hannah called out several more times, her voice already choking with tears. Anyone listening would know how much she cared for the unconscious man in the bed. Patrick woke up early and also heard the news of Julian's serious injury. He rushed to Hannah's apartment to find her, found she wasn't there, and followed her to St. Anne's Hospital. As soon as he walked into Julian's VIP ward, he saw Hannah sitting by the bed, holding Julian's hand, her head buried in his chest. His face turned ugly immediately. He strode over with his long legs, walked up to Hannah, grabbed her hand, and said, "Come back with me." Hannah broke free from Patrick's grip. "I'm not going back. I want to stay with him." The anger in Patrick's heart burned hotter. "Hannah Quinn, don't forget what you promised me." Yes, she had promised never to actively see Julian and to be a good girlfriend. But that was under the condition that Patrick wouldn't make a move against Julian. But now Julian was injured and in a coma. Why was Patrick so cruel? Just because she didn't go back with him yesterday. Hannah looked at Patrick with tears in her eyes, her gaze cold. "Patrick Pierce, you also promised me that as long as I pretended to be your girlfriend, you wouldn't hurt him. But you lied to me. You think I did this. Yes, it was you. You want revenge for your father. You want Julian's life." Yes, Patrick dreamed of taking Julian's life, but taking his life was too easy. He wanted to make him fall from the position of River City's richest man, smash him to pieces, make him the laughingstock of the entire city, and make his life a living hell. He didn't arrange the car accident, but Hannah didn't believe him. "Patrick, how did you become like this? So vicious. Get out, I don't want to see you again." Hannah's eyes were filled with deep hatred. This was the first time Patrick had seen her look like this. Even that time when he almost forced himself on her, she didn't have such a hateful expression, only sadness and disappointment. Now she actually felt hatred toward him, just for Julian Sterling. Then he had to hurry up and make Julian fall into the abyss. Seeing that Patrick still wasn't leaving and was staring at Julian, Hannah stood up, spread her arms to shield Julian behind her, and said, "Get out." Her tone was icy. Just then, a nurse heard the noise and came over. "Sir, please leave." President Sterling had given instructions that only women and children were allowed in his room. Men were to be kicked out, especially handsome ones. The nurse didn't know what Mr. Sterling meant by that, but having accepted the money, she had to do her job. Invoking her duty as a nurse, she chased the man out. In the VIP ward, only the unconscious Julian lying on the bed and Hannah, who seemed to have all her strength drained and was about to collapse, remained. Just as Hannah was about to fall, the unconscious Julian suddenly reached out a large hand and scooped her into his arms. "You're awake." Hannah's voice was filled with joy. Slowly, she realized something was wrong. How could a person who had been in a car accident and was lying sick in bed suddenly jump up and save her? "Julian, you're faking it." Yes, he was faking it. Yesterday, seeing the collision was imminent, he didn't swerve wildly. Instead, he decelerated as much as possible and adjusted the angle to minimize the impact. So, his head just hit the steering wheel, resulting in a minor bruise, nothing serious. He only needed a bandage. While he was getting bandaged at the hospital, Simon called. He said he found some information. Patrick was Peter's nephew, and Peter was Pei Tian's brother. Julian remembered the name Pei Tian, but he couldn't recall where he had seen it. Simon had only found this much for now. As for the truth, Hannah probably knew some of it, which was why she did what she did. Since he knew there was something going on, combined with the accident, Julian pretended to be seriously injured and unconscious to test the waters. Sure enough, just as he guessed, Hannah was forced. "If I didn't do this, wouldn't you have kept it from me forever? You silly woman, how could you do such a thing for me?" Julian held her in his arms, his heart aching at the sight of her injured hand. Although his tone was accusatory, his eyes were gentle. Back then, although the misunderstanding between him and Hannah was resolved, the hurt he caused her was real. He treated her that way, causing her to lose a child, and even wanted to cut out her liver. In Wan City, even though she gave him the cold shoulder, she still let him stay for meals and would come out to the living room to cover him with a blanket at night. Now, for his safety, she risked herself to stay by Patrick's side. She was still willing to do so much for him. Julian felt the 3 stabs in the past were too few. He should stab himself a few more times. However much he hurt her back then, he should take that many stabs now. "Who did it for you?" She frowned slightly. Hannah wasn't willing to admit it. She felt that spoken love was never cherished, just like back then. She didn't want to admit that Julian was still in her heart. "I didn't do it for you. I was worried Patrick would go down the wrong path because of you. He's not worth going to jail for killing you." Julian had never realized. Hannah was actually so sharp-tongued. He wanted to block this mouth that needed discipline. "Julian, don't assume. MMPH." Before Hannah could finish, her lips were sealed by Julian. The kiss was like a storm sweeping over her. Julian pushed her onto the narrow hospital bed and pressed down on her, his hands igniting fires everywhere. Hannah was incredibly ashamed. This was a hospital ward in a gap to breathe. Hannah shouted, "Julian, stop." This time, as soon as her voice fell, Julian actually stopped. It was killing him. "Julian, you..." Her whole face was red. "I'm listening to you. You asked me to stop, so I stopped." It felt like something was scratching at her. She felt an itch all over. The air went still, neither spoke. That itching sensation grew stronger. "Hannah Quinn, I love you." The sudden confession left Hannah stunned. In Wan City, Julian had also told her he liked her, but she was afraid of him, thinking it was just another way he was torturing her. But observing him these past few days, seeing how frequently he looked at her, and his absolute obedience to her words just now, someone once told her, "If a man is like an arrow on the bowstring, ready to fire, but holds back for you even if it hurts him, then he definitely truly loves you." Did she love him? Because of this confession, she believed him. She tilted her head up and kissed his cheek. The invitation couldn't be more obvious. Julian was stunned for several seconds by the kiss. Moved, the corners of his eyes grew moist. Received the command. Julian's movements were gentler than ever before. On the hospital bed, Hannah slept peacefully. Her exposed abdomen showed several obvious scars. They reminded Julian of how desperate she had been back then, stabbing herself repeatedly in front of him. It was also then that he felt heartache for her and realized that all those years, although he was outwardly cruel to her, he wasn't devoid of feelings. He loved her. Maybe he fell in love then, or perhaps much earlier. Julian reached out, carefully caressing her scars. This time, he would definitely love her properly. From Hannah's words earlier, Julian understood the reason Patrick targeted him so much. He wouldn't let Hannah take risks. Absolutely not. When Hannah woke up, she found she was no longer in the hospital ward, but in the South Villa, the marital home where she and Julian used to live. Lying beside her was Julian, his hand still on her waist, flashing a wicked smile at her. "Awake!" His hand deliberately wandered over her body. It reminded Hannah of their madness in the ward last night. She couldn't even count how many times they did it. Had Julian been saving it up for a long time? Where was Sylvia West? Hannah had many questions, but facing Julian, she didn't dare ask. "Who is Kiki's father?" Julian's expression suddenly became serious. He cared about Kiki, just as he cared deeply about whether Hannah had been with anyone else these past few years. Although, 5 years ago, he learned through Patrick that she had been raped. But no matter what, he still cared if there was someone else in her heart. Although Julian appeared calm, the hand wandering on her body trembled slightly. Hannah's lips curved into a beautiful angle as she smiled. Guess, Julian was about to say something when his phone suddenly rang. It was Simon. He had told Simon not to call him today unless it was urgent. He got out of bed, went to the balcony, and answered. Simon sounded very anxious. Mr. Sterling, Patrick Pierce has found many shareholders of Sterling Group and acquired shares from some minority shareholders, becoming a shareholder of Sterling. Because of the billion-dollar loss from the collaboration with Pierce Holdings last time, he incited the board and wants to dismiss you. Mr. Sterling, what should we do? Let him dismiss me. Simon suspected he heard wrong. Mr. Sterling, what exactly? Whatever Patrick wants, I'll give it to him. Mr. Sterling, Simon wanted to say more. This concerned the survival of the Sterling family. If Julian were dismissed, the Sterling Group would be taken away. What would happen to the old madam? Anxious, Simon called the old madam. Seeing Julian return, Hannah remembered that he frowned when looking at the phone earlier. Worried that something had happened, she asked anxiously, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just a spam call." Liar Hannah felt she and Julian had been honest with each other, but after just one night, he seemed to be lying again, which made her feel uneasy. Julian deliberately changed the topic and asked again, "Who is Kiki's father?" Hannah had no mood to discuss this topic at all. Using hunger as an excuse, she went to the kitchen to busy herself. Receiving Simon's call, the old madam rushed over. As soon as she entered the villa, she saw Hannah and Julian sitting on chairs eating. She glanced at Hannah, looked surprised, but didn't speak. After all, Simon's words worried her, and the company's situation was urgent. She looked at Julian and said, "Come with me." After the old madam followed Julian into the study, Hannah noticed that the old madam hadn't come alone. There was another child, about 10 years old. Between his brows, he looked exactly like Julian. "Are you Andy?" "Yes, I am." Andy was Julian's child, genuine and verifiable. Once, Hannah wouldn't believe Andy was Julian's child even if she died, convinced the DNA report was tampered with. She secretly took hair from Julian and Andy and did another test. The results still showed that Andy was Julian's child. In the 5 years she was away, Andy had grown up. It was evident the child was well loved by the old madam and Julian. He kept asking her, "When are Daddy and Grandma coming out?" Hannah herself didn't know when they would come out, and this home didn't seem to belong to her anymore. In the study, the old madam's face was very grim. "What do you want to do? Joke around with the empire your father built with his own hands?" "No." "Then why did you watch helplessly as Patrick Pierce acquired the company's shares?" "I just thought, whatever he wants, I'll give it to him." Julian, the old madam, suspected her son had a screw loose. "Mom, Patrick is Pei Tian's child." Back then, Julian wanted to explain the past, but before he could finish, he noticed something wrong with the old madam. Hearing the name Pei Tian, the old madam collapsed to the floor, nearly injuring herself. Fortunately, Julian caught her. "Mom, what's wrong?" The old madam had seen Patrick a few times. She always felt he looked familiar and felt a kinship with him, which extended to a feeling of kinship with Hannah too. She never knew why. Through Julian's words, she understood somewhat. Patrick was actually Pei Tian's child. "Impossible." "It's not true," she murmured. Decades ago, there was indeed a sinful entailment between Pei Tian, Li Shaoxing Julian's father, and herself, Rose Sterling Neiwan. Pei Tian and Li Shaoxing were good friends. Both liked Rose, but Rose's heart already belonged to Li Shaoxing, and she had accepted his proposal. However, Pei Tian couldn't let go of Rose. Once, taking advantage of her drunkenness, he couldn't control himself and forced himself on her. Afterward, Pei Tian regretted it. He didn't want to destroy his beloved's marriage, but the mistake was made. Pei Tian could only beg Rose to forget the matter and live happily with Li Shaoxing. He promised never to speak of it. Rose couldn't bear to lose her marriage with Li Shaoxing, so she agreed. The matter was concealed. Later, Rose became pregnant. Calculating the dates, she was certain it was Pei Tian's. She was afraid and wanted to go to the hospital to abort the child, but Li Shaoxing found out about the pregnancy first. Fearful of exposing anything, she planned to pass the child off as Li Shaoxing's flesh and blood and give birth to it. But after the child was born, he disappeared. Everyone said human traffickers came to the hospital and stole the baby. Rose was heartbroken over the lost child but knew he couldn't be found. After Rose's child disappeared, Pei Tian also left the company and went away. A few months later, news came that Pei Tian died from fatigue while driving. With Pei Tian's death, that matter faded from her memory. Later, Rose became pregnant again and gave birth to Julian. A few years later, because the company lost Pei Tian, Li Xiaoxing worked too hard alone and died from overwork. She thought that was the story. Now thinking carefully, that child was actually taken by Pei Tian, right? The child she thought was stolen by traffickers was actually Patrick. So, is Patrick my brother? Julian couldn't believe this fact. Patrick was his brother. But perhaps it was true, considering they were both stubbornly devoted to one woman. If so, what did it matter if he gave the Sterling Group to him? When the old madam and Julian came out, they found Hannah was long gone from the living room. Andy was sleeping alone on the sofa, talking in his sleep, calling for mommy. Julian searched the rooms. He hurriedly called Hannah, but no one answered. What happened? Everything was fine just now. Why did she suddenly leave? He hadn't even introduced Andy to her yet. Andy probably woke up from a nightmare, muttering about his mother. Julian held him in his arms and comforted him. You'll see mommy very soon. Watching this, the old madam smiled with relief. Yes, Andy's mother was back. Worldly matters were truly subtle. The child she thought lost at birth had actually been in River City all along, grown up now, and Andy turned out to be Hannah's child. She feared Hannah herself didn't know. The old madam suddenly realized something and hurriedly said, Julian, do you think Hannah disappeared because she saw Andy and got sad? Julian had a sudden realization. Yes, how could he be so muddled? He forgot to tell her that Andy was actually his and her child. He had to find her. Where would she be? Would she go to find Patrick? After all, Kiki was still there. Mom, take care of Andy. I'm going to find Hannah. Okay, go. Julian drove to the Sterling Group headquarters. He knew Patrick must be there, waiting to take everything from him. Sure enough, Patrick was at Sterling Group, sitting in the office his father used to glance at often. This office was originally intended for Pei Tian. Julian asked immediately, Patrick, where is Hannah? Patrick loved seeing Julian frustrated. He looked at Julian with mockery. Are you unwilling to accept that you're about to be dismissed? So, what if you're the revered richest man in River City? As long as I, Patrick Pierce, make a move, I can play you like a fiddle. Patrick looked just like a child feeling good about himself. It was particularly laughable. Julian, did you ever think you'd see this day? Julian stood quietly, waiting for Patrick to finish showing off. He would satisfy Patrick's enjoyment. When Patrick stopped speaking, Julian said, Finished? Happy? Now it's my turn. Patrick, the Sterling Group, I gave it to you. Patrick's face turned ugly. Julian Sterling, you are truly disgusting. You can't handle it, so you claim you gave it voluntarily. Julian laughed coldly. Whether it was a gift or not, you know best, don't you? Yes, it went too smoothly. Julian offered almost no resistance. Patrick didn't want to think in that direction. He hoped he had defeated Julian with his own strength. Although you forced Hannah to stay by your side, I can't erase the good things you did. You did so much for her, I know it all. Precisely because Hannah received so much kindness from you, I am repaying it for her. Because I don't want her to owe anyone, or feel guilt toward anyone in her heart. Julian, you're lying. Patrick, you're the one lying to yourself, aren't you? Deluding yourself into thinking you are the most successful person in the world who can have everything. Patrick, don't be naive. Love isn't something easily obtained. Just like how even if he commanded the wind and rain, so what? Couldn't he still fail to protect Hannah, allowing her to be raped by others? Enraged, Patrick flipped the items on the desk. A picture frame fell and shattered. From the decorative frame, a photo fell out. Pei Tian and Li Xiaoxing in their youth, standing shoulder to shoulder. Written on the photo, Friends Forever. Patrick sneered. Pa, what friends forever? He extended his leg to stomp on the photo. Julian reached out to stop him, and the foot landed on Julian's hand. Ignoring his injured hand, he carefully protected the photo. This action made Patrick even more manic, screaming. Patrick felt terrible inside. He was originally the best brother in the world, but now Hannah hated him. Why? Because of Li Xiaoxing, the instigator. He went mad, cursing Li Xiaoxing and by extension, the old madam. He cursed that a woman who liked a scumbag like Lee Sheoxing must not be a good woman, just a vain bitch. Julian couldn't take it anymore. He slapped Patrick across the face. He roared, "Do you know who that woman you're cursing is? She's your mother." Julian had left early to find Hannah. In the empty office, only Patrick remained. His uncle lied to him. Those documents were fake. He and Julian were half-brothers with the same mother. Sterling Group had always been jointly owned by Pei Tian and Lee Sheoxing. This result was too big a blow for Patrick. He picked up the phone. There was something he had to ask clearly. He called Peter. "Uncle, how exactly did my dad die? Didn't the files given to you state it clearly? Lee Sheoxing killed him. When did he kill him?" Peter thought for a moment on the other end before saying, 30 years ago, to get the shares your father my brother held, Lee Sheoxing engineered my brother's car accident and stole his shares." Patrick laughed coldly. "But, Uncle, I have a shareholding agreement in my hand. It's held in trust by the old madam. It lists 20 of the shares that rightfully belong to my father. Lee Sheoxing never stole my father's shares. You lied to me." He smashed the phone onto the ground fiercely. It turned out he was so stupid, used by others as a tool for revenge all along, and he even dragged Hannah through that experience. Fortunately, nothing actually happened that day. Otherwise, he would have died of guilt. Peter knew the jig was up. He had planned for so long, yet he failed at the last moment. It was all because Patrick wasted 5 years. If he had taken over Sterling Group earlier, even if Patrick found out later, it would be useless. It was all because of that woman who bewitched Patrick, Hannah Quinn. He picked up his phone and dialed a newspaper office. "Hello, Starlight News Agency, I have a scoop." After leaving Julian's home, Hannah went to find Natalie Summers. She hadn't seen Natalie in years. Andy's existence prevented her from opening her heart fully to be with Julian, because Andy needed a mother. Seeing her looking like she lost her soul, Natalie took her shopping in the city center. On a pedestrian bridge in the city center, the two saw a familiar face. Looking at the beggar on the bridge, Natalie said, "Hannah, look, isn't that Sylvia West?" Sylvia West? Hannah looked over. It was indeed Sylvia. That woman had left a deep impression on her. She recognized her almost instantly. But the Sylvia in front of her was no longer her former self. She wore a tattered cotton coat, lying on the ground with an empty bowl in front of her. She was a beggar. Why did Sylvia end up like this? Wasn't she Andy's mother? Sylvia found it strange that the two people in front of her kept staring but didn't give money. Looking up, she saw it was Hannah Quinn. She shrank back in fright. "Ghost, it's a ghost. Hannah, don't come near me. For the sake of me raising Andy for you all these years, don't kill me." Raising Andy for me? Hannah had a bold guess in her heart. She remembered the baby who died from the umbilical cord wrapped around its neck, the child the doctor said was dead. She hadn't seen it even once because she trusted the doctor. Now, judging by Sylvia's words, the child she gave birth to back then didn't die. Hannah grabbed Sylvia's arm and demanded, "Is Andy my child?" "Yes, Andy is your child." After saying this, Sylvia realized something was wrong. This person was solid to the touch. She wasn't a ghost, she was human. Hannah actually didn't die. It was infuriating. They were on a pedestrian bridge now. If Hannah fell off, she would crash onto the road certain death. Sylvia's eyes filled with malice, and she shoved Hannah hard off the bridge. Hannah's body flipped over the edge of the railing. It was too sudden. Natalie couldn't grab her. At the critical moment, a pair of large hands caught Hannah. It was Julian. Julian guessed Hannah might have gone to find Natalie. Simon happened to call saying he found Hannah. He rushed over, saw Hannah on the bridge, and sprinted. He managed to grab her hand, but her body was dangling in midair. Hannah forgot the danger. Her mind was filled only with Andy. "Julian, Andy is actually my child with you. You were deceived by Sylvia. I actually bore a child for you back then." Crying, she finished telling the story of the past. Back then, because of that DNA report, she had suffered so much grievance. She always thought she was wrong. But actually, she was right. Andy indeed wasn't Julian and Sylvia's child, because Andy was her and Julian's child. "Yes, Andy has always been our child. I kept wanting to tell you, but I kept forgetting to say it." Kept forgetting to say it? It seemed true. He had tried to mention Andy several times, but never finished his sentence. Haha, they were really foolish. Julian was holding her hand with great difficulty. He could be pulled down by her at any moment. Natalie couldn't reach, so she could only hug Julian's leg, her face full of anxiety. Hannah didn't want anyone to die because of her. She looked at Julian and smiled. "Julian, Kiki is also your child." They actually already had 2 children. She was content. With that, she let go. She plummeted from the bridge. It was good. Before dying, they had no secrets except for the matter of her rape. Let her take that to the grave. Hospital. Julian glared at Hannah, who was pouting on the bed, his face black as ink. Hannah pleaded, "Let me see Andy, please." She had been in the hospital ward for a day. She was going to mold. No, she actually let go to avoid dragging him down, falling from the bridge. If a truck carrying sand hadn't happened to pass by, and if she hadn't landed right on the sand, Julian didn't dare imagine her dying in front of him. Now, to punish her, he wouldn't let her see Andy. Hannah knew why Julian was angry. "I jumped because I saw the truck. So look, we're both safe now." Heth, she was being cheeky. "By the way, didn't Patrick say he was coming to see me?" During the few hours Hannah was hospitalized, through chatting with Julian, she had learned that Patrick and Julian were actually brothers. If not for the DNA test and the old madam saying it herself, she wouldn't have believed it. "Come, promise me you will absolutely never let go of my hand again, and I'll tell you a piece of good news. Something that will make you happier than seeing Andy." Was there anything happier than recognizing her son? Hannah had some expectations. Reluctantly, she said, "Fine, I promise you, I won't let go of your hand ever again." After speaking, she held Julian's hand. Julian was very satisfied and said, "Patrick went to handle some matters." Unexpectedly, Peter wasn't peaceful in the end. He actually reported Hannah's rape to the newspaper, wanting to make her the talk of River City. But he didn't anticipate that Patrick, as a precaution, had already secured the files on those thugs from back then. He made those thugs confess the truth of what happened that year. Hannah was never raped at all. Subsequently, Julian also held a press conference, exposing the evil deeds Peter had done, such as drugging Julian years ago and attempting to kidnap him. And now, to strike at Julian, he spread rumors to slander a woman's reputation. Peter going to jail was a certainty. So, back then, Patrick only found out after finding those thugs. Actually, Julian knew Patrick did it on purpose, making Hannah think she was defiled so she wouldn't dare to love anyone else. So she would rely on Patrick. But Hannah's love for him was so deep, just like how deeply he loved her now. After the press conference ended, Patrick prepared to go to the hospital. As soon as he exited the hotel, he saw Natalie Summers waiting outside, looking as if she had been waiting for him. "Together?" Patrick smiled and took her hand. "Yes, together." Actually, in this world, there was more than one person who loved like Hannah did. In the future, they still had a long road ahead.